Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Logical, Plausible, Probable. I'm your host, John Maddox, and tonight we're having another stream you just won't want to miss. If you got what it takes, click that link, or prepare yourself, for this arena is not for the weak. Now, let the mental combat begin, but always make sure your arguments are LPP.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another crazy out of nowhere after show here on LPP. Kind of got roped into this debate, and which was fun. It was well worth it. It was a good time. Hopefully, we won't have to stay in this current overlay of now in full scale dumpster fire. Hopefully, it will be the more tame one, and it'll just be the Evidence for God after show. But you never know when you get into after shows, especially ones over on MDD. It might turn into an all-out crazy interaction session. You never know. So for those of you joining one of my after shows for the first time, here's how it works. Kind of for the first 30, 40 minutes, we will generally do it in kind of round robin format and let people talk about their thoughts about the debate, who won, lost, best one-liners, best comebacks, best overall topics. What are your general thoughts about the debate? And then after that, assuming we keep going, after that, we will kind of go into more open discussion back and forth. But then if new people hop in, the into the stream. Then we'll kind of pause for a second, let the new guest air their thoughts about the debate, and then we'll go back to the general discussion. For those of you who are looking for how you get in here, link is pinned in the side chat. Look up at the top, click that link. You can do it from your phone or from your computer. Just make sure you, at a minimum, have your microphone activated. Otherwise, I will literally not be able to let you in to the stream. You don't have to have a camera on if you don't want to. And that's all you need to get in. So without further ado, I want to say welcome to my co-debater tonight. Taylor is here with us and is, I think it was her first debate, and she was really kicking tail, and it was great to both meet her and engage in discussion. So Taylor, how are you doing? Welcome to the after show. What did you think about tonight's debate? How did you feel about your first interaction in this YouTube arena?
I think I did okay. I'm always very, very, very hard on myself, but I haven't read the comments. I'm sure I got roasted by some people, as usual. And whenever debating atheists, they're pretty strong in their beliefs as well. But yeah, I think it was really fun.
Well, you did a great job. Windrider says, amazing job, Taylor. So yeah. Well, here's the thing. As I told you before we get into this, a lot of the folks over on MDD, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, they tell you that you lost, and it's just part of it. Did anything really stick out to you in terms of the positions taken by our opponents? Is anything kind of like, ooh, I don't know how to respond to that, or oh, they totally got us, or was it kind of a I mean, I see what you're saying, but it doesn't really defeat my position. What did you think about that? Was anything that stuck out to you?
I think I didn't get to make all the points I wanted to. Like at the end, I was like, oh, there's so many things I wish I would have mentioned. Even in rebuttal, whenever you're up there, sometimes it's you get kind of nervous, and I'm gonna have to get the hang of it. But yeah, I don't think any of their points really stuck. It's just the general atheist perspective of, oh, well, you can't prove God exists, but they can't prove God doesn't exist. So technically they should be agnostic instead of atheist, right?
That would make sense. I would definitely agree with you on that. And to your point about, in rebuttals and everything, like forgetting stuff, here's a question I got for you. Because I remember telling you this beforehand. Did you feel like time flew by? Or did it feel like it slowed down? Which one was it for you?
I feel like it flew by. I think that I like the rebuttal section whenever we're going back and forth giving rebuttals. And it's kind of hard to end it there. But yeah, it seems like it absolutely flew by. I wish we would have been able to have more open dialogue. I think that section was particularly short, and I wish it was longer.
Well, I was also being a little bit verbose there in a few sections, so I apologize for that. I did eat up a little bit of time. Me and Leo having our little arguments sucked up a little bit of time. I feel a little guilty about that.
Oh no, that's wonderful. I was glad you did, because since it was my first time up there debating, and I don't even do anything on YouTube except for watch videos, so I was kind of nervous and glad that you took over at some points.
Well, let's see. We got Duid. Okay, so real quick, we will.
I was kind of nervous and glad.
Hey, Duvid, make sure to mute YouTube. There's some feedback coming in when I added you. Okay, real quick, we'll get back into me and Taylor's conversation here in a second. But up next, we got Jungle Jargon. What's up, Jungle? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Did you see the debate, or did you just get a notification about the after show? If either way, how you doing? How's Missouri? Have you guys finally gotten some rain, or what is going on in your neck of the woods, my friend?
Yeah, we got lots of rain, and I planted my tomatoes already, so I'm good to go for that for right now. But yeah, I did watch the debate, at least not the entire thing, but I got in, what they're making some points. And I thought it was a little bit hilarious. Leo's attempted point to say that can God make other kinds of life forms without using DNA, and or something like that. And I'm thinking, God demonstrated, all the different kinds of life forms that he can make using DNA. And why, you don't like the method that he chose to make life, it's still irrelevant to the argument or the discussion is whether or not it proves that there's a God or not. So that was what I was thinking.
No, that's a great point. What always kind of cracks me up about the silicone versus carbon-based life forms, it's like, so it's pretty much recognized in chemistry that, number one, carbon-based life isn't easy. Like, there's so many possible combinations, like the ones that are necessary for life. It's like coming out of an even greater potential, right? And then on the silicone side, I mean, it's well recognized, even though people like Lee Cronin and stuff are desperately attempting. Well, I think he's kind of abandoned his silicone deal, but he's like, per his own statement. So, by the way, for those who don't know, Lee Cronin's like a major origin of life researcher guy, and he kind of gave up on DNA because it was like, well, I'm just going to see if I can create life myself with a different route, and because it's like, okay, well then. But why have you abandoned the one that you get to observe in real time? You could potentially reverse engineer that. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? That it's like this might not be that easy. I might need to look for an alternative to continue down this little pathway of, what is life and can I create it? So that's anyway, we'll get back to that in a second. Up next, we've got the one and only corporate operator Bubble, also known as Bubblegum Gun. I think you had a super chat in the debate. What's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. What's going on, man?
Hey, can you guys hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, if you're coming through actually a little bit loud, you might turn down the gain just a smidge.
All right. How about that?
You're good, man. That's good.
All right. Yeah, I can get the microphone like right in front of me. I thought the debate, honestly, I think it was a bit boring, kind of like cornbread. And I mean, I think that's part of the course for like winning your first debate. But I think you guys did pretty well. I think you guys came up the winning argument, came up the winners. If I had to choose, but I did find it really interesting that Leo dodged my $5 super chat. Basically, I was asking him like about the Hickles drawings, and he pretended not to know because we talked. Me and him talked about this before. And I asked him, these are fake. Why are you supporting James W. and telling him this is real? So that was an intentional dodge on his behalf. And the chat noticed that he was running away from that question. So let me see. Let me also see.
Was there anything about the? I know Taylor and I apologize for boring you so much. There, Bubblegum Gun. When we weren't boring you, was there anything that stuck out other than Leo's dodge? Was there anything else that kind of stuck out in terms of the interactions?
Yeah, I think Taylor, you're approaching this like if these people are good faith debaters. They are not. These people are here pushing an agenda. Have you ever questioned why they keep appealing like, oh, just give us more time? They're trying to buy time because the end goal for them isn't like to prove evolution. That's just a smoke screen to keep the perpetual to keep the perpetual politics of a liberalism up. Because they know through this liberalism, they can push more mutations into the populations, and it would just go unnoticed. So when you see like a fat is beautiful, that's part of the psyops they're playing. So you're not like question, well, that's bad mutations. It's causing diabetes, and especially and I find this really interesting because they're fucking up the black communities the most, and they have the gall to say they're not the racist ones. Like, who do you think these mutations are impacting the most? The black communities because they have low income, et cetera, et cetera.
All right. Let's not go down that rabbit hole at least not yet. We'll save that for the session, later on in the evening. Up next, we've got Duid, who I've actually interacted with you before. It's been a long time. But what's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Did you see the debate? If so, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I watched it. Great job. I think you on Week in Review actually, or maybe a post show when my co-host Jennifer debated on it. Maybe it was T-Jump or Leo, one of those debates. But you popped on a post debate channel, Church of Entropy that I was on. But it was a pretty good debate. Like, I mean, basic critique the terms have to be well defined, or people are just talking past each other. So if it's a question, like who's the affirmative, who's the negative? So I mean, you spoke first, and it was unfortunate that the PowerPoint in the beginning, was stuck on the first slide. But if you're actually going to make the argument that you could scientifically prove God, which is difficult to do, you might be able to philosophically prove God with logical arguments. But what is science? Science is just a scientific method, and can you use the scientific method to prove God? Even as a theist, I would say that's unlikely. But the terms weren't well defined, or even what the outcome of the debate, and it was kind of the generic points, like Amy and Leo do this debate all the time. They stream constantly, and you make their points. So I guess I'd say it was a reasonable debate, but it wasn't a deep delving into issues. And the common problem with these debates that prevent people from talking past each other is well-defined terms. What's exactly the root of the arguments? What exactly are you trying to prove? And I mean, do you actually think that you could scientifically prove God? And what is the definition of science? Science is just a method that came up in the last few hundred years, versus the classic philosophical arguments. And then if you're giving somewhat like there's a lot of uncertainty, and you say the best explanation that the facts can't necessarily prove God, but considering all the details, that the explanatory power of God is more powerful. And maybe Taylor was almost going to mention something like ghosts, but to say that there's certain phenomenon that science can't explain well, and although it can't prove that there's a God, that God has more explanatory power than science. And maybe that was partially what you're saying. I also found, I looked on Twitter, so Taylor was studying microtubules, and I'm a big fan of Stuart Hameroff and the Science of Consciousness conference. And I know the Penrose-Hameroff model of the quantum mind is based on the orchestrated objective reduction occurring in microtubules.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that got me into studying them, because I love microtubules as well. And you're referring to the OR theory of consciousness. Yeah, it's a great one. And microtubules are responsible for consciousness, I believe. And I'm showing that people with neurodegeneration tend to have, for example, buildups of aluminum. And in my experiment, I'm going to be showing how aluminum in the presence of microtubules will break down microtubules, and that will tell us the mechanism of neurodegeneration and somewhat explain consciousness in a way.
Can I just expand a little bit on that? Yeah, what David just said, like that argument of ghosts is one I also made myself. I think you should expand it upon that, because I brought this argument to them before, and they're too chicken to actually go ghost hunting, and they're like they always request like, how about you bring us a video? Like, well, that's not gonna prove it to you. It's like I can show you, like there's literally probably hundreds of thousands of ghost videos by now. They're not gonna take any of those videos, so it's pointless to bring to them one more. So I asked them, you go ahead and do it, and they're too chicken to do it. They always come up with like scapegoats as why you can't do it, because it is.
Hang on a couple things real quick. So first off, everybody, I just posted a link to Taylor's Instagram. It is currently pinned inside chat. So if you're on Insta, make sure you click it and go subscribe to. Oh, hang on. I may have put in the wrong link. Hang on 1 second here. I'm going to have to find it. I did incorrect link. Never mind, folks. So pause on that. But real quick, before I let you guys get back to it, your point, Duid, about proving God with science was not the point that was being made, nor the argument that I was making, any stretch of imagination, nor was it the title of the debate. The debate was does science provide evidence for God? Not necessarily proof, but evidence in favor, for or against. That was what we were arguing not necessarily you can prove beyond all doubt the based on this evidence from science. And in fact, the point that I'm making, and I made throughout the entire debate, and I made in many debates, is that what we're deriving from science is the evidence we're getting is showing that God and things that are not contained inside of the natural under the natural laws are what is necessary for. That's what we're deriving from science, not necessarily the proof of how God operates, works, etc., but that it would be necessary for.
Well, I guess you also the definition. What is God? Like to define God, and usually I'll talk in philosophical neutral terms in a debate like this, and I would more argue for dualism or a spiritual realm. And if you mean, what do you mean by God? Do you mean a creator? Do you mean that there is a spiritual realm? And then if I was going to argue in that way, say that there's phenomenon that are observed that can't be explained by the material realm alone, and therefore there must be something more than the material realm. I mean, even consciousness is the example that I like using the most. But to make a leap from there to God, and then you have to clearly define God. So it makes it a hard debate to follow without laying out at the beginning clear definitions of these terms.
Well, the thing, there is an experiment around ghosts, and that is a definitive experiment. For example, like you use the Ouija board, you get paranormal experience, or you see a ghost. A ghost only presupposes one thing: a god. This is why some atheists are resorting to the absurdity that ghosts are natural, that there is some sort of a ghost particle, ghost evolution. So if you do because I'm not sure if you guys
when you study metaphysics or theology, but you got to make these technical distinctions that what you mean is a separate spiritual realm, not like, because you could be the classical Greek, you could be an atheist and still be a dualist, and there's a material and spiritual realm. And a deist or theist is an implication that beyond that there's a God. And so you could be an atheistic dualist who believes that there's a spiritual realm, and ghosts are not necessarily a proof of God. Ghosts are proof of a separate spiritual realm. And then if you're adding on, what does it mean, God? God doesn't just mean that there's a spiritual realm. God means that there's an entity that controls the spiritual realm.
No, that would be incoherent to have ghosts without God, because ghosts
would be coherent. It's a classical definition. Atheistic doesn't mean materialistic. It means that there's no deity. In the same way, well, maybe the material world was uncreated, maybe the spiritual realm was uncreated, and there's no God who created the spiritual realm, but you could believe in a material spiritual distinction. I mean, these are classical philosophical terms as when like to clearly define the definitions, where you don't get into these confusions of what do you mean by God? Do you mean the spiritual realm, or do you mean God? And if you mean God, what do you mean separate than the spiritual realm?
Well, no, it would be incoherent to have a spiritual realm without God.
Well, hang on, real quick. So
it is coherent. You might argue that. You might make that argument.
David, hang on. I agree with the point you're making. In relation to the debate with Leo and Amy, I've debated both of them like 4 times. They fully understand where we're coming from. It's discussed and whatnot. In the debates, as you may have noticed, if you were paying attention with Amy, it always zooms back around to what's the physical explanation for how your God did X, while operating from the perspective that there is no, if your frame of reference is that there is no spiritual realm, there is no anything external to the physical universe, and you're going to forever insist that the whatever did it must be part of or inside of this universe. You can define things all day long, and then in the debates where they just refuse to accept it, you end up with, you guys have picked up on this, but the point I made over and over again was the evidence that we're looking at would be indicative of the entire point in relation to what I'm viewing as God as a thing. And I said this multiple times in the debate, that is not bound by the physical laws, natural laws, and the things that are necessary would necessitate an entity that is not bound them and is therefore external to it. The ongoing, well, you still haven't showed me how your God did it, is irrelevant. It's a dodge mechanism that's used ad nauseum by that I call Evo atheists on YouTube.
They're requesting a naturalistic explanation for life, which is inherently supernatural. Life came about through supernatural means. It's incoherent to propose a naturalistic explanation.
Yeah, they seem to be forgetting that natural things can't account for themselves. Life can't account for itself. Neither can any matter or time or space can't account for themselves either.
No, not naturalistic. Because like if they want to they want to like conjure up like the universe came through natural means. Well, that's impossible because there is no physics in a time before physics. So you're appealing to the supernatural already, and to say physics existed even before the Big Bang, well, that's absurd because the physics break down at the Big Bang. So they're appealing to the supernatural. They don't know it yet.
Well,
For
people
example,
don't realize that there is no science and philosophy. There's a philosophy of science, and science is just a subfield within philosophy. So it's very difficult to frame these issues. And I think you made clear scientists claim more than their field because science can't really lead to conclusions. I mean, the science could provide evidence for philosophy, but science can't really inform philosophy besides for, it could inform philosophy, but science isn't philosophy.
Well, this is the thing. There is a scientific experiment around ghosts in which you can communicate with them. And so,
okay, hang on before we go down the ghost rabbit hole. Okay, so I now have pinned Taylor's Insta and her Twitter, so it's pinned in the side chat. Go follow her on both those accounts. And yes, anyway, continue, guys. Oh, and by the way, you guys been go back for this, and before we go down the ghost rabbit hole, Taylor, is anything that we've been talking about so far that sparked your interest or you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, so earlier we were talking about the silicone-based life, and this just reminded me of something interesting when I was doing my studies on abiogenesis. So, in the primordial Earth, there was no phosphorus present, and as we know, we need phosphorus to make the DNA backbone. So, a NASA scientist went and came up with this radical theory that arsenic could have replaced phosphorus as our DNA backbone. They did some experiment, and it was it eventually got debunked, and the woman got fired. They tried to represent how arsenic could have been the DNA backbone at first, and then phosphorus could have later integrated, and that's just simply not true. So that's another unsolved problem of abiogenesis: the lack of phosphorus available on primordial Earth for life to use.
Well, these atheists don't care about those type of arguments. They don't care about the genetic code argument. They don't care about ERVs. They just hand wave them away. So you really have to ask them what is you got to ask them what is your criteria specifically, because this puts them in a box in which they don't have an escape door, because they always have a escape door if you don't ask them for a specific criteria, because that puts them in a box, and that gives you a target to attack. If you just give them these random facts, they'll just hand wave it away. Escape door.
Well,
Yeah.
this is okay. Go ahead, Taylor.
I was going to say it would have been much better to debate actual scientists who at least know a little bit about it, because it's hard to talk to somebody who has just no understanding of what's going on in the actual discrepancies at hand that we're talking about. If you have no fundamental knowledge of that, it's very difficult to have a conversation with somebody like that.
It was pretty painful to me when I brought up the point of ATP synthase in being more complicated than a internal combustion engine, and there being just the incredible complexity of it. And we're like, no, I think that the engine's more complicated than ATP synthase. It's like, have you never watched an animation of all the craziness that's going in to
They
make
must
that
not
all
have.
work?
That's what I meant to put on my presentation, but apparently my PowerPoint glitched or something.
Bruh, I was like, when he said when Leo says that when you brought up the point of inference, you need you're inferring to past data, and he agreed with you, but he wasn't getting it. I was like, lol.
Yeah, he agreed. Yeah, but the
I try to
internal
have
combustion engine, engine, it doesn't have information to make it. I mean, it doesn't have information that actually gives the commands and the mechanism to make internal combustion engine from instructions. It's just no comparison. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, maybe just are Maddox and Taylor, would you consider yourself like Platonists? And if you're saying like the cell biology necessitates higher order rules or structure that is being mediated by the spiritual realm, by some sort of forms, and then you're making the claim is that material science can't even explain simple processes like cell biology, and according to the Ohm, besides for the philosophical question, what's the origin of these higher order rules? If the materialistic science is just taking as a given that these higher order rules exist and are part of their material understanding, but those rules in and of itself can't explain even simple cell biology processes, and would you be proposing some sort of Platonic dualist understanding that these things that the material science can't explain is being mediated by another realm? And that's basically the argument. The explanatory power is that the material science can't explain this, and I have a dualistic Platonic system where there's some sort of spiritual realm that's entering to explain this. Was that the center of the argument that you were making?
For me, no, not necessarily. I agree that there's, from a Platonistic perspective, that there are abstracts, obviously, and I think that the functional information that is necessary for the end outcomes, as well as obviously the abstract components to like the physical laws that are ultimately governing it, I agree with you on that context. I don't necessarily, not from necessarily like a vitalistic standpoint, which I think might be the extrapolation of I don't know if that's the point you're making, but in terms of the other realm inserting, I would say that the information necessity, whether you want to say it comes from another realm and to be imbued and encoded into the physical medium, you could say that, I guess, but I would argue that the macro point is that the mechanical, chemical actions that take place are not remotely plausible without the immaterial information that's required for them to be executed. And so in relation to the necessities and what would be required, unless you're going to argue, not saying you understand rhetorically, unless you're going to argue that immaterial encoded information that that has to precede the expression of the encoded mechanical function, unless you're going to argue that can create itself, then in my opinion, the only real rational conclusion you can come to is there must be an entity that is not bound by the physical laws of the universe, or it has to be an intelligent agent that precedes us. Either way, you can't circumvent.
Are you a scientist also, Maddox?
Officially, no. I don't know what you mean by that in terms of, am I professionally one? No.
Well, if you're theoretically advancing a dualistic science where you're proposing that there is some sort of understandable explanation that includes the inner working of material and non-materialistic laws like a Platonic system, or if you're just arguing for the sake of a believer that materialism can't explain this and it must be something more and we don't understand it, but that thing that we don't understand isn't going to be answered in materialistic laws. It's going to be God, as opposed to saying like, no, we can't understand it, and I'm going to forward some sort of dualistic science.
I'm not really sure. Let's go back to your earlier point in relation to clear definition. What do you mean by dualistic science?
Well, I'd say Platonic, where you have some sort of, you'll say, forms or ideas, mechanisms that are not materialistically operating, and to some extent you could define it and even try to explain this process. So if you're taking on a simple level like cell biology and saying this is the limitation of the material explanation, and here's the non-materialistic explanation that will complete the understanding of the phenomenon, or are you just saying that there's a limit to how much we can know about the phenomenon, but obviously the phenomenons are more complicated and it must be God, and that's beyond our understanding?
He's basically asking,
And I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily know that ultimately, from the ultimate perspective, whether or not both can't be true in terms from an understanding perspective. Now, Bubble,
Maybe like a Kabbalist or Hermeticist or some sort, where you actually have some sort
hang
of
on,
theory that you think
I'm
you could
responding
advance.
now. I'm responding now. So the point being is you don't have to separate the recognition of limits versus a desire to understand even as much as you can, even if there might ultimately be a limit, right? So from my perspective, I don't, at least in the current form, I don't think it's remotely plausible for me to be able to understand the existence of God. Like, let's assume God exists in the current finite mortal coil that I'm in. Ultimately understanding the existence of God is not remotely a plausible experiential aspect, or something I can actually truly, understand, right? I mean, that's fair, right? However, that doesn't mean I can't be searching for understanding of different facets of God and concepts that make up God, and to expand my overall understanding to whatever the limit is in terms of my current capacity. Now, from the quote unquote science perspective, you reverse this. I can number one say that in terms of the barrier of which you come to in terms of the naturalistic explanation, yes, I'm saying the barrier comes in place when you have to look at the immaterial information that is necessary for the outcomes that we're observing. And I've repeated myself now on this, unless you want to argue that the immaterial functional information can create itself, then to your other point of, well, is it the more rational conclusion that God or some other whatever regards to the definition you want to apply to it, some other preceding intelligent agent must have been necessary? I mean, I don't really know where you want to go with that one. I mean, it's like, this is what the point I made in the debate, like, unless you want to argue that codes that follow the principles of communication and information theory can create themselves, then you have to apply the same criteria to their existence. And if every single other known type of code has necessitated an intelligent agent, i.e. humans, and our level of intellect to create, then if you have one that follows every single principle and has all the necessary requirements, or same necessary requirements, then you can't just on the surface level and just be like, well, it applies to all these others, but not this one. Even if you can continue to do investigation and hope maybe at some point, it's the point I was making about the $10 million prize, is, hey, if you're the one that figures it out and you have solved this question and you figure out how to do this and create cross the bridge between the immaterial and the material and solve the information problem, hey, you have falsified my personal position, that a preceding intelligent agent is necessary for these things. And anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think you have to like completely separate the two of those and take one.
Well, just a clear framing that if you're, like the classic example, Newtonian celestial mechanics, and Newton's equations in the beginning couldn't quite explain planetary movement, and he said, God keeps things in, keeps the planets in motion, and then Lagrange, and eventually the calculus got good enough to not solve the three-body problem, but to at least create models that worked with the movements of the planets. And if you're talking like cell biology, is saying currently the science can't properly even explain basic things of cell biology. And so if it's going to be like celestial mechanics, where you think, well, the science is eventually going to figure it out, or if you're going to give some sort of hard stop and say, no, it's impossible, material science will hit this hard limit, and at this hard limit, either that's the limitation of human knowledge, and past that, human knowledge will never get to a further understanding, or you're going to claim that there is some sort of answer to these questions, and that you could posit a spiritual system. So if you just, is it just belief? Like, Amy's saying they're eventually going to figure it out. I believe they will. And you're saying, I don't believe they're ever going to figure it out, therefore God. Or does your God answer actually provide some sort of explanation that the material science can't account for?
Okay, well, two things. So number one, the point you made about Newtonian mechanics is actually a very common talking point I hear ad nauseum from atheists, such I don't think you are, but it's actually been a dramatic misinterpretation, actually a complete rewrite of what Newton actually said. He actually didn't say that God.
I mean, more the Napoleon Lagrange meeting where eventually
I'm providing clarification here because this is actually addressed in I'll remember the name of the book here in a minute, but I've actually read what Newton wrote, and the misinterpretation is what you said, which is God keeps it in motion, which Newton actually said. He didn't actually say that. He actually said the opposite. He said that God put it in motion, and then there's something else that keeps it in motion. So it's a clear distinction. That whole point that you're making is a very common, God of the gaps, even Newton believed in God of the gaps, which is actually categorically false. And if anybody doesn't believe me, I will take the time to go look it up and find the direct counter to that. Anyway, secondarily, in relation to material science, if information is ultimately immaterial, then and only the physical medium that can contain it is material, but not the semantic values, the syntax, semantics, and pragmatic values of it is immaterial, then obviously strictly material science would be meeting a limit by default if you're now investigating something that is not material. And so I mean, there's way more you can go on that, but I
meant more the calculus.
That's the reason.
The level of the calculus at the time in Newton, like perturbation theory, wasn't enough to accurately, the three-body gravitational problem, and then Lagrange, when Lagrangian mechanics came out, that at that point they were able to make calculations strong enough that, and then the famous meeting with Napoleon, I'm pretty sure it's Lagrange or Laplace, and where does God fit into this? And he said, I have no need for that hypothesis because it's more not like the science, but the calculus was good enough to predict, model the equations to accurately predict celestial mechanics that Newton's calculus at the time wasn't good enough for. I don't know if you want to call that the God of the, but it's saying that Amy
I think we got the point.
They're saying that eventually that will happen with cell biology.
Right. Well, so the last thing I'm going to say on this, and we're going to let.
But we got the point, but there's still.
Jamie just hang on, Jungle. So Jamie just came in. He's going to go up next. Then Joel. Make your point, Jungle. I'm going to make a quick response, and then Jamie will be up next. Go ahead, Jungle.
Yeah, because you're saying we're appealing to God of the gaps, but they're doing the exact same thing, appealing to multiverses. That's the exact same thing. The reason they appeal to multiverses is because the universe that we're in can't account for all this information, where it's coming from or anything. So they have to appeal to infinite possibilities, which is the exact same appeal to an infinite, all-powerful being. It's the exact same thing, only they're appealing to infinite universes, which requires infinite energy, which is the definition of God, an infinite, all-powerful, all-knowing God, being able to do anything and everything. It's the same appeal, but you're not accounting for where the energy is coming from, because physical energy can't make itself. It can't direct itself. Neither can any physical thing. So yeah, let somebody else say something.
All right, appreciate that, Jungle. Okay, so up next, I think that is Jamie. Is P Zombie? Is that you, Jamie Russell?
Guilty.
What's up, man? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. I think I saw you at the debate for at least a short period of time. What's going on, man? What'd you think? Who won, lost? What's your opinion? I came out of retirement. I had retirement for this debate, so what'd you think? How did we do? How did Taylor do on her first foray into the madness of YouTube MDD debates? What'd you think?
She hit all the right points at the right time, hammering it home with the facts, and especially with the whole keeping it real with the, not letting them pretend like they almost got this thing figured out. How does it feel, John? I got to ask, how do you cope with the fact that no matter how many times and ways over and over and over you show the logical consistency and necessity about the reality of coded systems, coding, and they still just basically are just meh. I don't know. I don't think so. I
They're
think it's
not
natural.
sincere.
I just
It's
don't get
They're just posturing.
Well, I think it's a willful suspension of critical thinking and actual analysis of the points that are being made via the, oh, at some point we'll figure it out, an explanation that's other than yours defense. So to kind of reference back to the point that Duid was making, I think a key distinction that I want to make clear is that in no way, shape, form, or fashion am I in favor of stopping research on figuring out how things work. And because ultimately, from a macro point of view, I don't doubt that given enough time, human intellect could reverse engineer the intricacies of life and potentially be able to create our own. Once we learned how it all worked, right? We might be able to pull it off. But that would be like saying, even though on an exponentially more complicated level, that would be like saying that because Iran grabbed a drone that crashed doing a surveillance mission, and then their engineers were able to go and reverse engineer it, and then they were able to manufacture their own. That would be like saying that somehow that removed the necessity of the American engineers from designing it and all of the other laws of physics, chemistry, et cetera, that had to be before they created that design. That all that stuff didn't have to be accounted for before the Iranian engineers were able to reverse engineer and manufacture their own. And the fact that people don't seem to grasp this drives me up the freaking wall, to be honest.
Get your own code. Get your own code from scratch, fool.
And
your own machines to build it.
And with Amy, what really drives me up the wall is the fact that, at least theoretically, I don't know, she claims she got her master's in information systems and is a coder. It's like people do code audits all the time. Okay, my company that I sold, we got hired to do code audits. Like a third party, somebody who had a different software created for them, would have us do a code audit and then figure out how it all worked and then either add stuff or take things away. Like humans do this all the freaking time. Like, what do you people think we're doing in synthetic biology right now? Like, we are adding stuff, taking things away from different organisms and creating new functions or inserting new functions. Yeah, people like Taylor who are avidly researching how microtubules work and all these different things, right? We're trying to figure out how it freaking works so that we can like fix it if it breaks, or maybe there's all sorts of different things that go into this, right? But somehow that doing that and figuring out how something all works would mean that you somehow have removed. I figured out how something works, therefore nobody had to make it. Like,
that's like a double. That's like a double layer.
That's just dumb. That's just really dumb. And I think it's an excuse to be like, oh, God did it, therefore we don't need to learn. Like, nobody actually operates from that perspective except dumbass atheists on YouTube who somehow think that's what's actually going on with theists who are doing research. If anything, and I've spoken to many, and I don't know, Taylor, if you want to weigh in on this, but I've spoken to many theistic scientists who talk about how their primary focus is trying to figure out how God engineered something. And they're actively trying to figure it out. So anyway, enough of my
Can I reply to this to basically do
real quick, Bubble, and then Joel will be up next. Go ahead, Bubble.
Okay, the reason you can't answer this question with like a natural means, for example, the fundamentals of the universe, once you get to the fundamentals of it, is supernatural. Once you get to like, and to create life requires a supernatural means, because what is life? Life is the body and the spirit. It's consubstantial. It's a mixture of the two. You can't have one without the other, else you're not going to get life. So it's just posturing. They know they're not going to be able to make life, and they know they know, especially Leo, because I debated this on Leo. He knows the fundamentals of reality isn't material. And so when you say you're a dualist, well, this is a false presupposition. There's no such thing as dualism. It's non-dualism. For example, to a materialist, if they're seeing what's happening inside a video game, that's not supernatural or not natural. That's still materialistic, what's happening inside that video game, to an atheist. And so to God, what's happening inside our universe, it's not materialistic. It's still spiritual. And so everything is spiritual. All the fundamentals are spiritual, and you will not have a naturalistic explanation. And that's they don't want a supernatural explanation. They want a naturalistic, which is impossible.
I think that's right. I think that's totally right.
Okay, Joel, you are up next, my friend. You've been
Hey,
very
man.
welcome to the stream. How you doing?
Hey, you guys talking science stuff. It sucked me in, I guess. Doing pretty good.
So here's a question for you. So those of you who don't know this, Joel used to work for SpaceX, and I just have a question for you. I don't know if you saw the debate, but a thought experiment I did with the debaters tonight was if we went to Mars and we assumed that NASA has recorded all of the different freaking rovers and stuff that have landed there. And I'm assuming that SpaceX would have done the same. We just assume that we've accounted for all the different pieces of human technology that are currently on Mars. Elon Musk finally pulls off creating the spaceship, then go to Mars, with humans on it. We go there, and the humans, while they're there exploring, they discover a data storage device that, after we crack the code that is contained therein, we are able to figure out that what is encoded on this little gizmo we found is the schematic for some kind of nanotech, and this is stored in a digital format.
Cool.
Even though we have never observed the creation of this piece of technology, would you say that it's the most rational conclusion, even if you don't know who it was? And obviously in this case, you're probably never going to know who actually did it. Do you think that anybody that works for SpaceX or NASA and such would ever conclude that it would not be evidence of intelligent agency being necessary in order for this little gizmo that we've now reverse engineered to determine what's on it, the information that's on it? Do you think they would ever conclude that did not require a preceding intelligence?
Of course not. Yeah, no.
It was James Ford.
Information requires intelligence, yeah.
So the interesting thing is, like, then as soon as I said this, it was, and I also used the analogy of, like, before I went to the Mars thing, I also used the analogy of, like, if you saw a painting on the wall, would you ever conclude that even though it's just, paint, that it's didn't require an intelligent agency? Said, well, no, because I've seen people paint. Therefore, I know that a painter was required. And it's like,
you don't even have to go to Mars, man. We got it right here on Earth. DNA
that was the additional point that I made.
It is a three-dimensional, bidirectional, packetized information codec technology. DNA is technology. And did I hear you say that you have information systems masters?
No, me?
Yeah, you mentioned somebody had an information master.
The atheist, one of the atheists that we debated, just got her master's in information systems. And
that's what I finished a couple years ago. Was that?
But they claim that. I'll put it this way: they claimed that I said, do the principles of information communication theory, the exact same ones that we use to apply to our codes, do the exact same principles apply to the genetic code? And they danced and dodged and claim it. Well, it's kind of similar, but not really. And it's like, no.
Oh my
the principles of information communication theory are the principles of information communication theory. They're not just like they're not just like kind of little like, shades of gray and all these different things. Like, no. There's root fundamentals that can be applied to any and all communication systems. Correct?
That's why I was asking, because that is like the holy grail of information science. We're trying to mimic what God designed in DNA for our own human technology. It's light years ahead of the latest we're doing right now in the field of information.
Joel, you said Holy Grail. You're obviously religious. Everything you say is a lie.
Oh boy! So, and did I hear John say you're working on microtubules?
Yeah, tell us about that. I want to hear about that.
I was going to ask if you're familiar with Roger Penrose's work on that.
Yes, I love Roger Penrose.
Awesome.
So that's kind of what got me interested into microtubules, because they have quantum properties and they can possibly explain consciousness. So right now I'm trying to understand the mechanisms of neurodegeneration via microtubules, and I'm trying to propose a research model in order to test if drugs will cause neurodegeneration. And I can go into more detail if you would like.
Dude. Yeah, I mean, probably not tonight.
Taylor, we've been
kind of a crowd, but
the rest of us have been rambling. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about it? She and I had a conversation about it. It's very interesting.
Yes, so there are certain drugs that cause neurodegeneration, and we don't really know how neurodegeneration is caused and how these drugs cause it. So I'm proposing a method that would show how neurodegeneration happens. So basically, I have seen and believe that these toxins, such as aluminum and pesticides, interfere with the microtubule stabilization. And in the presence of these things, the microtubules will actually dissociate. And so if I'm able to show this, then I'm able to say that these neurotoxins are causing the microtubules to dissociate. And as we know, microtubule dissociation causes the damage to the neurons. And that's the damage to a microtubule is what you see whenever you have Alzheimer's or dementia. And so I'm going to basically be proposing a method of preventing it by a research model that would let us to see if these things alter microtubules, and I'll be proposing a method of how neurodegeneration happens. So just another example of, like, there's so many things that we don't understand, and I know there's a lot to learn, but even things like neurodegeneration, we don't have like down packed like what's going on.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Elon Musk's Neuralink?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay. Dude, that sounds like an excellent combination of technologies. The main reason why I was interested in Penrose's work is basically it's a wireless version of Neuralink technology. The idea that not only, like you're talking about microtubules being a aspect of neuron cellular, issues, positive or negative, but that they could be even a possible form of communication. That's what Penrose's main one of the first paperwork on it was trying to see if there's a way to augment or manipulate, however you want to describe it, whatever, quantum level communication might be going through these tubulars. And then, of course, is there a way that we can augment that for human technology, basically do neural lace type technology without wires?
Yeah, so I don't, based on what we know about the brain, I don't believe that we'll be able to like upload our consciousness, or that like a machine is going to be able to influence our brain, just because the way machines work and their computation is much different than how human brains compute stuff. There's just vast differences in a human living brain and a computer.
Well, that's true, but like I was talking about, so the challenge, I guess, in the latest fields of information science stuff, that's part of what we solve. We, the AI stuff, John and I have talked about it, where computers themselves will try to either adapt new or existing protocol information flow and try to adjust for, miscommunications or, lack of, any kind of barriers, whatever. So computers today sort of think for themselves to the point where they can adapt to new information streams and basically create language, essentially. And so the theory behind the neural integration technology is that once we have some sort of mapping, however, through whatever means of technology, of human neural, chemical, biological, neurological, synapse firing, it's some sort of code, it's some sort of system. Once we figured out the pattern to it, it's just a matter of translating the language.
Right. And I know that you can use technology to, for example, make a prosthetic leg, and based on like the muscles that move, the prosthetic leg will straighten and stuff. And I'm also familiar with deep brain therapy, in which you do some
awesome.
And it can it actually has benefits, but that's much different than like uploading consciousness on a computer.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, and the whole reason it even was, well, at least for Elon's project started, was because we have bottlenecks in AI development, and so just the computers aren't fast enough to do some of the data warehousing techniques and stuff that we do for research. And so the idea was to hope to somehow just augment or some sort of connectivity with a human brain, just to process things faster, not necessarily to. There's all kinds of great debates on what consciousness is. Even it's more likely non-corporeal, which is a whole other.
I think it's way more related to the whole body than people think.
Well, I'll put it this way. Somebody put it this way. I think it's like really good example. Okay, think of a radio. The consciousness is the signal going. Yeah, the consciousness is the signal going through the radio. It is not the radio, and it is not the signal. In this example, the signal would be the spirit, and the radio is your body. If you destroy the radio, does that mean the signal is gone? No, of course not. The signal is still out there, but it is only through this body that this combination that you're able to have consciousness.
Well, I giggled. Are you familiar with George Washington Carver by chance?
No, never heard that name.
He's a famous African American scientist.
Goober peas.
Butter.
How do you not know who George Washington Carver is? I had to do freaking book reports on George Washington Carver and his 2 weeks of dropping out. What did he drop? Like 200 and something?
He was like, he was one of the most useful biochemists in human history. Yeah.
He invented like every kind of product from peanuts. That he's just a total hero.
Yeah.
By the way, what you were saying about the radio thing, I basically agree with that.
You reminded me instantly of a famous quote of his, Bubble. He said, quote, "I love to think of nature as an unlimited broadcasting station through which God speaks to us every hour if we will only tune in."
That is bass. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that man is an absolute genius. Yes.
So I have to look him up. Tell me his name again. Can you type it in chat? He sounds pretty cool.
Sure.
I'll look that up.
Yeah. Stand by.
George Washington Carver.
Hey, Bubble. I got to bust on you for a second. Okay, listen, bro. George Washington, and then add Carver.
Wait, is he actually related to like George Washington, the president?
Dude, he was named after. Dude, okay.
Everybody had a name George Washington back then.
All right, let's be nice to Bubble. He is in the in like the age of where this didn't get communicated to folks. So he was post Civil War, and he was a freed slave, as I remember correctly, and then became as Joel was referring to, like a prolific chemist, and just invented like a ridiculous amount of things. Well, he wasn't just chemistry. I mean, he invented other stuff too, like physical stuff too. But anyway, yes, he was named after George Washington, and so all you gotta do to Google him is type in George Washington, probably at space C, and I imagine the Google even like autofill the Carver part for you.
So I was going to mention something that was brought up that's kind of interesting about consciousness. So we are still learning about consciousness, and something interesting is that your microbiome in your stomach can actually influence your mood. There's neurons in your stomach that are well connected to your brain, and so that just goes to show like consciousness isn't just in the brain; it's also in different parts of the body. So if your stomach can influence your mood, then you could say that it's consciousness coming from your stomach as well.
Do you know the word for your mind in scripture is your stomach, is the word for like your guts or whatever? I think that's right. They translate and change it for you.
Sorry, Bubble. I was hoping you get a screenshot of that so you can look them up.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got the name. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they didn't know that like your brain was like where you seem to think. I don't think they were totally clueless. I mean, I don't think they necessarily knew about brains, exactly what a brain was when they were, in the biblical age. But it is interesting that I think it's the mind, or I forget which word it is, but like the translators, I think it might be like the difference between a mind and a heart. It's like the same word for like your innards, or like where your intestines or whatever, I think. Yeah.
If you're going to take a pure biblical perspective, you say that consciousness and thought has.
I should ask you. You're obviously Jewish, huh? Sorry.
Well, in the Bible, the word for soul generally resides in the blood or the heart, and the Greeks also thought the Egyptians thought that the brain was a cooling agent, but even from a modern biblicist perspective, I would say that consciousness and even thought has nothing to do with the brain. It's I'm a classical dualist, and it's a function of the spiritual realm, and the brain does basically. I took anatomy, and I've seen dissected brains. The brain does basically what the biology would make it look like it does. It does motor control and sense perception, and what we consider consciousness. There's two aspects, like consciousness awareness and the controller, like who is the controller of the body, and you're saying that that's not happening in the brain, that's happening in a separate spiritual realm. And even the question of thought, like that computer produces thought through circuit logic, Boolean logic. And so the hypothesis that most people accept in the scientific realm is that the brain neurons form some sort of circuits, and those circuits are able to produce logic in a similar way to a computer. If I'm not sure,
there's many aspects.
Religious background that say like, no, I'm a believer. I think that has nothing to do with the brain. That's a non-physical process, and so you'd have to understand that from your own understanding of science. And you say like, no, the research is not going to get anywhere on the brain. You could research the brain from now till forever. You're not going to find consciousness there. You're not even going to find thought there.
What about memory?
Memory, there's more evidence. They say the motor control, sense perception, and memory. And they called the neural correlates of consciousness that the test that is really these areas light up in the brain. And so the classical model, Cartesian, biblical, Talmudic, Vedic, is the brain as a receiver. So the neural correlates of consciousness is not because the brain is producing consciousness, it's because the brain is receiving consciousness. And so you could classify what is the scientists will call the neural correlates of consciousness is in reality the neural correlates of the soul.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I could take that on as an idea. I kind of have a monist view of that.
Even the microtubules, the microtubules, it's receiving it. So consciousness is being received from this separate realm that's not material, and there's evidence of that. Like there's scientific evidence. You could look and see evidence that something is being received into the brain, and then you argue, well, it's not being produced by the brain; it's being received by the brain.
Well, I've heard of people like basically not having like a brain at all and being alive or something to that effect. But do you remember the which term I was thinking of, where it's like kind of the same word for innards and it's related to like either your mind or heart, or they translate it that way in the English? I'm trying to remember the word.
I mean, the German word like your kishkas, which means like your gut.
Scripture. Yeah, like the word they translate in English to like mind or something, but it's really the same word as the Bible would use for like, say, the midsection guts of a person or something. Like when Abraham splits like some things up, and it uses the English word.
The word nephesh is the word that the Bible uses in Hebrew, and it comes from the word breath, that God breathed the soul into man, and there's levels of the soul, like if it floats in the blood, or like the heart of understanding. But no, I don't think it would be like the gut. I mean, there might be some explanation of the gut, but usually it's consciousness, or the soul is said to flow in the blood or reside in the heart.
Okay.
And it's related to breath, and whatever.
Like the breath of life, right? Isn't the nefesh like what the living person or something kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, biblically, God creates man out of the earth and then breathes the soul into him. But however you're going to interpret that, is say that it's not the brain. And so if you're a believer and a scientist, that you say like, no, I want to conclusively tell you that it's not the brain. You could research from now till forever, and you're not going to create a model of consciousness emerging from the brain. And so I'm not sure if Maddox or Taylor, if that's your understanding, or if you're arguing that you say I'm a theist and saying there is this phenomenon of consciousness that exists, there is a life force, and it's impossible to arise from the material, and therefore it must be God. And if you're not going to say like not only the current state of science can't explain these things, but you're going to give some sort of scientific argument that why science will never be able to explain these things according to science itself.
So it just seems as if the more we learn, the more that these problems are defying the laws of science. Like they're defying their own laws to try to make to try to answer these big questions about how the universe and how life arose and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that the direction is going to go in that, keep going in that same direction, where as we learn, we actually learn how complex things are and how unlikely they formed by themselves. So in that notion, I would say I haven't come, I guess I, for some of the impossibilities, would say that I feel that God definitely intervenes.
Well, I think that it also be fair to Taylor, I think as a researcher herself, she doesn't necessarily want to say like, oh, we'll never figure it out, or there couldn't be some scientific explanation. She wants to keep in my notes. So I get that. For me, in relation to your point about the reception of consciousness, I've actually argued that many times that in the era in which we live with the concept of virtual reality, the fact that so many people, the materialists strict materialists want to cling to consciousness being created 100% in the brain, and the concept of our body actually being the receptor for, basically operating as our avatar that we get to control. Why that is such a rejected premise fascinates me, to be honest, in relation to, are you guys actually thinking critically in like, what is a reasonable explanation for first person frame of reference? Like, I think about it all the time when I'm walking around, and I just observe, I think about what I'm looking at, and it's like, so I'm in this body and I got first person frame of reference. It's pretty cool. Don't know what's going on.
Dualism.
I don't control much of my I lean dualist.
Are you a dualist? You say like, no, I'm not this body, and saying that that you're incorrect if you're identifying yourself, that your soul, your consciousness is not a product of your body, and that so to say the me that's talking to you and the you that's talking to me, that has nothing to do with your body. That's a product of your soul.
No, I agree with you from the macro view. What I was about to say is, I am at a minimum a dualist, and on a case sometimes I flip flop back and forth between idealist. Is where I go, and I know Jamie's being triggered because he's a freaking physicalist, but
I'm a Christian physicalist. Thank you.
I know. But my point is that at a minimum, I think dualism is evident, and
No such thing as a physical world.
Idealism may be the ultimate reality. Is
why can't God create a person amazingly with, look at all the detail in our brains and in our DNA? It's like, why does it need an extra thing? I'm not saying, I mean, in a sense, I'm like a substance dualist or something, in a sense, I guess, because hang
on. This is a rabbit hole we've been on forever. I totally forgot that Elroy joined us and is moving very quiet. What's up, Elroy? Welcome to the stream. How you doing? Did you see the debate, or are you just joining the after show? What's going on?
No, I watched the whole debate, and you guys did great. I have a few thoughts that I wanted to share. That's why I came up on here. But you guys did great. I couldn't help but think that with these debates, people always fall into the same situation that there's not going to be much budging on any side, and people are pretty much kind of like politics and everything. They've made up their minds, and there may be people on the fringes that are teeter-tottering and might fall in one camp or the other, but it's an impossible thing to expect to convince people, because the simple it's to do with the heart. I feel that maybe some people don't have a certain, maybe, I don't know if this is true, a certain spark or message relayed into that radio, that signal. Maybe some people aren't receiving certain transmissions, and they're not turned on, let's say, to certain things. And maybe some people lose that signal slightly, and then you get people that wander the earth, the wilderness, as they say. But what I wanted to mention is that to what you guys were just talking about, as far as that the mind and the body and the stomach and the radio, just on the religious end, there's religions that do not, and they're Christian, they do not believe that when you die, there's just something that, let's say, separate from your physical body that ends up, floating around somewhere in some sort of mystical, there's folks that believe, totally valid Christian faiths like the Seventh Day Adventist. I know that there's some others that do as well believe that when you die, your body goes back to the ground, and the spirit, that breath of God, returns to God, and you cease to be, in hopes, in that future hope that you are resurrected. And then it's not the Catholic idea, and many of the Protestant concept. That's not but there are some folks that have extracted from the Bible that, as Daniel, please don't forget me. I'm paraphrasing terribly, but don't forget me. I lie here, in the earth. Remember me. So there's two different. There's various concepts even within Christianity of what that is, what we are, what is this. But to me, just the final thing, I think that the most basic thing as a complete novice to everything possible is that I am totally observing everything. I'm an observer. I can't help but to just know that. I think that I know that. But beyond that, I cannot say anything for sure. And so I don't understand the position of a person or people that will take the stance of saying that there is no creator to all this marvelous, incredible spectacle that we're observing. And then, there's something to do with the heart. And maybe it's some sort of psychotic episode that one falls into, but I doubt it. Where you get chills up your spine, on your skin, and you feel uplifted in certain things. You can consider it just chemical reactions. But I don't believe that, but I can't prove it. So I'm stuck as well, as much as the atheist would be, except that I believe that we were created and there was a creator, specifically Christian, but I believe that, but I can't prove that. And so we're stuck. We're stuck is what I think, as far as opening up the door, that final door. We can continue down that path, but that's the best we could, do little by little. That's basically my thoughts on the whole situation.
Until you meet Jesus.
Yeah,
And then you can know.
We can prove a lot. There's a lot we can prove.
But you're talking theism, where you're saying, okay, there is a deity, and you think the deity is Jesus. And if you're just talking spirituality and the soul, or comparative, interfaith theology, is saying, well, there's two realms: a material realm and a spiritual realm. The soul's part of the spiritual realm, and then there's a question: well, who is the I? What happens when I die? Is the I something separate that's intrinsically me and returns to the spiritual realm, maybe enters another body? Or if you're saying, well, the I isn't really me, the I is God's possession, not my possession, and so the soul goes back to God, and my body goes back to earth, and the I disappears to nothingness. Versus some sort of separate deity, like the Kabbalist will call the deity rules over the material realm and rules over the spiritual realm. And so the I could exist in the spiritual realm and still have a relationship to the deity. And if you're a Christian, you're saying, well, the deity is, you're not just a dualist. You're saying there's also this third entity, this deity, God, and you're going to claim that deity is Jesus.
Yeah, there is a verse in the Bible that says everybody has an angel that continually beholds the face of God, and I believe it's Jesus that said that. So everybody does have an angel beholding the face of God. So that
I mean, the angel is a spiritual, non-physical entity, and then the question is saying that God isn't just the spiritual realm. God is separate from the spiritual realm. If you say God is the sustainer of both the physical and the spiritual, and you could have a karmatic system where the spiritual realm has mechanistic laws just like the material realm. And then if you believe in prayer that the deity itself, you could do miracles, the deity who sustains and creates the material and the spiritual realm has the power to change it. And that aspect that so you could have like Hindu or traditional systems where you have a spiritual and material realm, but there's just laws that they operate by that can't be changed. And the deity is, if you believe in the deity, is not constrained by those laws of karma or rules. And if you could pray or communicate directly to that deity, the deity could intercede on your behalf in both the spiritual and the material realm.
If you guys don't mind,
I put those verses in
instead of the spiritual speculation, I was curious. I don't get a chance to talk very often with the scientists online. I was curious if we can go back into more of a scientific conversation.
Yeah, well,
That's a bunch of
it's not really speculation because the Paul said we got there's spiritual bodies or heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, so there are two different kinds of bodies.
Yeah, and quantum physics explains all that. But I was curious if and Taylor, I don't know if you want to try a different venue someday soon. I'd love to talk more about your research, microtubular stuff. Was particularly hoping to. I was kind of chomping at the bit just to, if I can, real quickly, everybody ask real quick if what you do, are you able to actually visually see, chemically see microtubules yet, or is it still kind of a Pandora's box or mystery
Yeah,
box?
so I am actually able to see microtubules, which is a
Awesome.
very interesting point because in most cells we cannot see microtubules because there's so many and they're overlapping. So it's
Right.
super hard to see individual ones and them growing because normally cells have microtubules just kind of going everywhere.
Mhm.
And so
Constantly
in
changing
my
too, right?
model, yeah, so I proposed a model where you can see individual microtubules, they don't overlap, and you can study how different environmental conditions or chemicals affect the dynamics of microtubules. And so that's a first in the scientific community.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of
Yes.
proposing something great that'll let
Yep.
us firsthand look at the microtubules with no interference.
I would love to learn more about what your work is about, because that is extremely fascinating.
Yeah, maybe another time we can meet up on here. I mean, I'm kind of busy and I'm out of town, so I wish I was able to talk a little bit more, but
Well, I don't have a Twitter or Instagram account. Is the unfortunate thing. I do have another YouTube account.
If Taylor enjoys doing this, she'll have to make her own YouTube page, and you could do more debates, or you could just make PowerPoint lectures and explain your research to the general public.
Yeah, I need to learn how to do that. Like make a YouTube channel. I've had multiple people tell me to make a channel and present some of the stuff I know. I don't know. I don't have that much time to do that, but I will make a YouTube channel if that means I can get more debates because I absolutely love debating.
Well, Taylor, we can get you. Trust me, we can get you more than enough debates if you want them. And in the context of operating your channel, it doesn't have to be massively time consuming. So I mean,
you could just do, if you give lectures like you're a professor or something, you could just record some of your lectures and put them up, and it doesn't take any time to do that. Or you could just find some time and talk to the computer screen for an hour. You could record it and put it up, or eventually figure out how to live stream and build up an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with the help of y'all, I can get some followers.
I wanted to just share one last thought, although it sort of goes, it's not to do on the scientific side of things, but just if I could just share this bit. I always hear in these debates the argument of the good and bad God, let's say. And then I think and they always argue, well, a good God would not have done that. Who wants that? And they go in this direction. And so my thought, and since I was pretty young, I always thought to myself one simple thing, and for better or worse. And it's simply, if I build something and then I turn around and wish to completely obliterate it, it is my complete right, since I created it, is my complete right to do so. And with that, I think to myself, this argument of good bad from a human perspective is in the world, in the realm of religion, and in the realm of the creator, and in the realm of us being created. To me, there's no issue, zero, whether 5 floods occur one after the other, 10 avalanches occur, 7 cities are toppled. It makes no difference to me, because I think I mean, it does in reality, but it makes no difference with the thinking of the creator does as the creator so chooses, and so be it.
And,
that's all I ever think. I think if he created us, so be it.
And keeping in mind that he'll restore everything anyway. He's going to raise up everybody from the grave anyway. Everybody. Good, the righteous, the wicked, the good, the bad, the ugly, everybody.
Right. And I don't think to myself, well, in terms, so what is my reckoning and my view of things are mine. I believe they're mine. All I know is that if we were created, what the heck do I have any word to say on what the creator's decision making is, whatever that might look like? So on that level, when they put that argument, it shows it appears like they're trying to they're trying to weaken. Maybe they're unaware. I don't know what it is. In fact, I won't say anything more. I just wanted to share that idea.
Argument of atheism, the Epicurean trilemma. And if you want to say it's purely logical, that if God is all good, all powerful, and all knowing, how does evil exist? And saying it goes back to the Epicureans who rejected the deities, referring to the pagan Greek deities. But I mean, it's a pure logical. It's the most classic, strongest argument that atheists could use, and not just saying, well, God is all powerful and we're not. How could we know? It's a purely logical argument that say there can't be a God because it's a logical contradiction to God being all powerful, all good, and all knowing. The fact that evil still exists.
But wouldn't our definitions they're not sufficient? Our morality and our whatever that might be, it's not sufficient to be able to. They can make. Am I wrong there? Am I missing something? Or in the realm of our reckoning, we can't really. Isn't it null? And
I'm still a believer, but would say that it is the best single argument that an atheist could give. And you say, well, it doesn't disprove that there's a God. Just because evil exists, there could be some reason why God has a world that includes evil. But actually, what you're saying is probably the single best argument that an atheist could give. That, there's this all powerful, all good God, but yet there's still all this really bad stuff that happens. How is it possible?
Right, but how would they know what's good? How would they know what's good?
Well, there's answers to the question.
Albert Einstein meant, gentlemen.
It's not a ridiculous argument. It's the single best argument for atheism.
This is exactly what Albert Einstein meant when he said that people should not anthropomorphize God. He's talking about atheists trying to claim that God must fit in their box.
Well, it's the problem of evil.
Well, in my opinion, I agree, Duid, with what you said, that from the atheist perspective, they claim that is hands down their best debunk of God. I agree with you. I mean, I hear it all the time. In my opinion,
it's been around for 3,000 years. It's the thing, it's the argument that everyone has given for, the greatest atheist, or for every generation since recorded history has given that same argument.
Right. And the point I was about to make is that, in my opinion, if you want to argue that is the best, or the reason that God does not exist, then it necessitates a finite, limited worldview, because if this is but a blip in total existence, then our frame of reference does not enable us to actually have comprehensive understanding, number one. Number two, we actually have in our own experience, we have examples of this, which in my opinion just makes that argument a juvenile one from the big picture. If assuming
it's a logical structure.
I'm finishing my point here, David. As children, we, from our frame of reference, when we don't have additional experience, when you're a baby in a diaper, when you crap your pants or pee, it's horrible and it's evil. It's just this horrific experience, and they start screaming and crying and kicking until it gets changed. As you get a little bit older and you start teething, oh my God, my teeth hurt, and you start freaking out, right? And you get a little bit older and you fall off a bike. It's the worst thing ever. Why? Because you've never experienced this before. How could this possibly how could this happen? And then as you get older, you have your first crush, and then you have your first heartbreak. And from your frame of reference, it's just so horrible. How could this happen to me? Oh, my
goodness. That's pretty bad, John.
Huh?
Yeah, but you're personalizing it. You're personalizing it to say, common, like, okay, I suffered and I cried to God to end my pain, and it didn't end my pain. But if you're talking, you're talking just a logical contradiction.
Not the point.
Not in a personalized way. Just saying it's a logical.
Okay, that's not the point that I am making, Duid. Now, where I was ultimately going with this is, at the time of those experiences, they seemed horrible. As you get older and you have more experience and you look back on things that you thought were so horrific at the moment, you very often laugh at yourself, at how horrible you thought it was, or when your parents didn't let you do X, Y, or Z, or they forced you to do X, Y, or Z, and laws that you had to follow, or if you broke them, then you had punishment, all this other kind of stuff. As a kid, or even as an adult, for many people, and depending on the context, the justifiable reason for whatever it may be is not perceived or understood at the moment. But then again, as you get older, some of the things you understand, other things you don't, at least maybe not till the next stage of your understanding expands. But my point is that if you're going to claim that it's a defeater for God to exist because he wouldn't allow all these bad things to happen, then you have to put yourself in the frame of reference of God in order to substantiate that position, when we know beyond doubt there's all sorts of things that, based on how freaking old we are, or what our personal life experiences have been, that we can't understand how this could possibly happen. And then not too long into the future, you look back and realize what the benefit was. And my point being that after we shuffle off the mortal coil, assuming again that, which if you're believing in God, this would be the case, that there's existence beyond this one, then it is highly plausible that looking back, when you're no longer bound by this stage of existence, that you're probably going to be able to see the reason for a lot of these things that from your finite frame of reference seemed to be not understandable, and why would God allow this? And the point I'm making is that atheists, in their finite worldview, which by necessity, their worldview must have, this is it, this is all there is. So the only outcome is going to be, how could this possibly happen in this tiny little frame of reference? Because you're refusing to allow yourself to have a wider frame of reference. Therefore, why would God allow this to happen? Seems ridiculous if God actually existed.
And this is where I kind of disagree with you, Christian theists. And I know, though, here, first let me bash on the atheists first. When the atheists defined evil, they always defined it like what ought not to be done, or what is forbidden. But that is only in reference to something, and they never want to define what they're referencing, because it doesn't exist. They can't say, well, murder is bad. Then they would say that, but they don't want to say that.
Reference to what they think.
Yeah, but it's not. But they never say what this is. It's not non-existence. So they are proposing no problem of evil. Then this is absurdity. Also, I was going to expand. They're trying to trick you Christians into enumerating. Like they want you Christians to say X is bad, because now they have something that is outside of God. And so if God wants to be moral, he has to appeal to something outside of himself. For example, let me use the question, is God rational? This is just the question sounds inconspicuous, but there's more, there's something underlying it, under it. For God to be rational, he would have to appeal to the rationality outside of himself. So he's no longer appeal to his rationality, but to reason. So is God reasonable? They'll use this question.
No. Albert Einstein answered that back in his day when he said that God is the first cause. All causes come from the first cause.
Let us reason.
I agree. I agree with that.
God is rational. He's the source of rationality.
Yeah, God sets the standards.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing because when they're appealing to when they're appealing to morality, they're appealing to the Christian meta. They're appealing to your meta. So yeah, they are borrowing from your meta. I don't believe in objective morality. I do think it is purely subjective. It's just
that's objectively retarded.
Well, that's the thing. Define evil.
Well, I'm hoping to shame you into changing your mind, but I would say there's about 10 of them.
Evil is to lie against the truth.
Well, no, how it's defined originally is what goes against God's will or against God, or because by that definition, God could never do evil. Even if he commands a person to kill a baby, he's not evil because it's not going against his will. But the person denying to kill that baby, he's evil because he's denying God's will.
Hey guys, real quick interjection. Taylor is about to have to take off, so let's give her last word. Taylor, anything? Appreciate you joining the after show. Thanks so much for the great debate. Any kind of last word you have before you sign off and get to bed at a reasonable hour before you go back to research tomorrow?
I just wanted to say that y'all are a wonderful group of people, and I think this is a great topic that most people are too closed-minded to ever think about. This is wonderful, and I'd love to be in any future debates. And yeah, it was fun.
Awesome. Well, folks, I've got Taylor's Twitter and Instagram pinned in the side chat, so make sure you go follow her on both channels, and hopefully we will get you back again soon, Taylor. And by the way, congratulations, folks. Last Thursday, I believe, Taylor passed her PhD exam to go into official candidacy and such. And so she got a lot of cool things coming.
Yep.
Hope to see you around.
Okay, I added my number in there in case anybody want to text me anything or whatever. Y'all have a wonderful night. It was good meeting y'all.
Later,
Bye-bye.
I think I'm gonna hop out too. It's getting late. Gotta work tomorrow.
All right, appreciate you, Bubblegum, and we'll wrap it up here pretty shortly. But looks like we got James just joined us. What's up, James? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Did you see the debate, or are you just jumping in on the after show?
Just jumping in on the after show. I was just, I don't know. I saw it and I was like, all right. So I was watching on YouTube, and then I think it was Bubblegum that was talking about subjective versus objective truth, and yeah. So after that, I had to get up from my bed, leave my wife upstairs, laying down with the baby, come downstairs, and just kind of jump in on that. But
something was wrong on the internet, you're saying? Cute.
John, before you close down, I'm going to show you something, man.
Well, I wasn't saying we had to shut down right this second. I was saying we'll shut down relatively soon, but we can keep going for a while. So James, what so if subjective versus objective triggered you, which side do you lean on, and what do you try? And are you trying to share something, Jamie?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say, if there is a subjective truth and then there is an objective truth, which one is correct, which one is wrong, and if there is no objective truth, right? If there's only subjective truth, is that a truth? Is that a true statement?
Yeah,
because
exactly. Is that objective true?
If what you're saying is true, then that's an objective truth, and it's a circular argument, and it falls on itself.
But there's a problem with saying what's true. It's true for how long? Is it true forever, or is it true just for the time being?
What was the first part of the question?
Is for how long? How long is it going to be true? For example, aluminum is aluminum, copper is copper. How long is that going to be true?
Well, forever.
No.
The truth is the truth.
Not if it disintegrates.
Platonic aluminum is forever aluminum. Never mind.
Hey, John, I wanted to ask, man, was this after show, I guess, predicated on an actual debate? And can I see the link to it?
Yeah, so the debate was over on Modern Day Debate, and let's find the link. Yeah, it was myself and Taylor versus Amy Newman and Leo Filius.
Oh, is he still around?
Oh yeah, he's still rocking and rolling. Leo was actually pretty reasonable for the majority of the debate, and then towards the end, he started melting down a little bit.
But not very rational. Not very rational or logical.
So I actually like the guy. Just out of control.
I'm looking for it right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's falling apart.
Did you have?
All right, who can tell me? Who can tell me the first Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel 2? Who is the first empire? Anybody?
Persia.
That's the second one.
Persia or Babylon?
It's Babylon and then Medo-Persia, right?
Yeah.
And then Greece and then Rome.
Yeah.
And then
first one is Babylon.
Right. That's the head of gold.
No,
right?
I think it was Babylon, then Medo-Persian, then Assyrian, then Greece, then Rome.
Greece and Rome are after Nebuchadnezzar, and that's an anachronism. If you take it as prophecy, it's meant to mean Greece and Rome, but at the time, Greece and Rome didn't exist. So, I mean, some people, if it's Egypt or the four kingdoms, but I mean, if you understand that to be a prophetic verse about future times, it includes Greece and Rome.
Yeah.
John, I wanted to ask, man, was there any particular point, especially like on a science topic that you may have wanted to like a question or talk about from that debate?
I kind of was hoping you guys would have expanded more on the I guess the many machines, as you'd call it, that work together to produce the basic functions that end up creating everything, how complicated they are and all the processes. You guys started talking about that towards the end, and I was like, and I saw personally, I saw it as a complete, for me, biased sort of collapse from what their stronghold, let's say, because it is on the verge of complete, just jaw-dropped awe and inconceivable that such complication could have arisen from nothing, or whatever that means. But that,
I think it's already to that point.
The theist brought that up, or the atheist brought that up?
John, this will only take 2 seconds. I just had to establish a couple of things real quick. That was the one more thing. So when you go to the next, in Daniel 7, pretty much most scholars, at least Christian scholars, as far as I understand, agree that they're recapitulated in like Daniel 7, the four kingdoms in different symbology with animals. And I just wanted to see how you respond to this, because like Rebecca thought this was kind of stupid, like it's not a thing. But a lot of other people, I think it's kind of curious. Other people were kind of like didn't know what to say. But most people kind of think it's kind of eerie. But so in Daniel 7, in other words, Medo-Persia, like Persia was the bigger country as I understand it. So you can see on the map that Iran right there in the middle is basically Persia, and then kind of north, slightly west to the north up to the Caspian Sea there is kind of where like the Medes were. And they're the second kingdom, and then after the second kingdom is Greece, right? Alexander the Great. Well, so in the symbology of Daniel 7, it talks about a ram with one horn that's bigger than the other one, because it represents like the split kingdoms, one bigger than the other. And then after that, there's a he goat with one big horn, with one horn, and then he ends up beating, taking over the ram, because Ram's Medo-Persia and Alexander Greece takes over that. And then it says 4 horns sprout up where the one was, and that's like the 4 kingdoms that when Alexander dies, the 4 families that take over the empire. But so this is what I was just looking when I was researching Daniel or whatever just the other night. All right, this is it right here. I'm going to show you now.
What's the iron and the clay?
Miry clay. That's the
iron. The iron and the clay that don't mix. The iron and the clay that don't mix.
I would say it's believers with the beast system, which is Rome.
I would say it's today.
Yeah, right.
The iron and the clay that doesn't mix.
Right. Well, I think
it says people will mix their seeds, but they're still not going to be coherent or.
Can you see my? Okay, cool. I want to talk to you about it, Jungle. I just want to show this so we can move on. I just wanted to see what John makes of this. So here's where Persia was essentially right here, and then Medes right here. Now, so that empire was called or symbolized in Daniel 7 is the ram with two horns, one bigger than the other. Now look at this. Right in here between Mede and Persia. Look at this. Tell me when you see it. Right here.
Oh, it's a ram?
Yeah, look at that horn, the horns, and the face right there. Like a nose on it and the eye right there and the two horns. This one's kind of oversized, but it even comes to a point right there.
It's almost like a ram's horn.
Yeah, it's totally a ram's horn right there. And now look at this. So the one that defeats it is a he goat. Comes after it. Oh, by the way, the text says he's heading northward, westward, and southward, but not eastward. It says, which is exactly where this thing's moving and exactly where they ended up going. Now look at this. What's behind the ram here? What do you see? Anybody see that?
What's behind?
The next animal is a he goat. Look at that, right there. Doesn't that kind of look like a goat? So side profile goat a little bit. You see it? You don't see it? There's the head right here.
Oh, okay.
And the legs. It's got like this leg curled back. Like it's like about to like kind of like a strutting pose.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about.
Even has facial features a little bit. Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a goat though. That's a little bit more like I don't know, some other animal.
Like a panther, but it's got the beard. Look at the beard.
Listen, my splotch tests, okay?
Yeah, that one's not as good, is it? But the ram one's trippy as hell, dude. But dude, think about it. The Bible said those two countries, it's literally right in between Persia and where the Medes were. And there's that ram, and it's moving that direction, it said. That's trippy to me. I don't know. What do you think? Stupid?
Well, if you look at this is completely like separate from that, but if you look at Jerusalem, on a map, you might be able to pull it up, but the shape of the city is the shape of what I think the word is eternal in Hebrew, and it looks, if you look up eternal and I think that's what it was. Pastor down south when I was in class, he was talking about that, so it was kind of a cool little thing, completely side, separate.
It's one thing to find a ram somewhere on the map, the thing that kind of looks like a ram, but I mean that's like uncanny and that's totally natural. I should have zoomed in on it more. It's a dry lake bed and the weird shaped mountains. But what do you
logical structure argument like of the nature of prophecy? Okay, so here's information that's inconceivable that a person should know according to materialistic explanations, and therefore they must be a prophet from God, and the God who created everything is communicating to them. You could give that sort of logical structured argument, but from the pure like proving God, just having unexplainable knowledge, like a magician predicting the future or knowing information that there's no reasonable way to expect the person should know that. What the actual scientific logical implication can you draw from that?
I'll tell you one. The scholarship is like it's been for a long time. Like they argue over, was Daniel written 600 BC or 200 BC? Well, if it was written in 200 BC, then that was totally just written after the fact, pretended prophecy on that part of it, anyways.
And what
I think I happen to believe it's the most important prophecy in the Bible. And if we know,
I'm gonna head off too, Jamie. I know that was longer than a few seconds, but if we're done talking about science or that debate, John, it's past midnight my time. It's freaking 12:39.
Yeah, it's getting late. Is there
Science it up, Joel?
Was there anything you were wanting to talk about, Joel? I know science.
Well, no, I just wanted to ask you. Before Jamie started that thing about prophecy, I was asking you if there was any topics or things brought up in your debate earlier today that you wanted to talk about, something that maybe you could help with. Maybe, I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, like the whole like fundamentals of code theory and such applying to genetic code and any other type of code. That one just drives me at the wall to no end, to just be dismissed. But to Elroy's point, I think it was Elroy's making James, was making the point about the machines, right? That to me, whether you want to argue or look at it from the information required for those machines to exist, or just the fact that you have to they are required for our existence, right? That always gets me. I mean, just the level of intricacy. I mean, I'll tell you this much. When the dingbats claimed that the ATP synthase was not that complicated and not that big a deal, that one just blew my mind. I was just like, I don't even know. And this is to the earlier point. I wish you talked about it more. That was kind of the thing that kind of blew me away. Of like, all right, if you're going to dismiss ATP synthase as not being complicated, I don't know if I can actually have a real detailed conversation with you.
Reasonable.
Right. If you're going to dismiss that one, and they're like, oh, well, Nick Lane in a podcast said that they were able to kind of sort of replicate a ATP synthase in a vent. And it's like,
it's rhetorical strategy. I mean, if you want to debate someone like, John Francis Greppi, or, someone that would actually understand the biology, but if you're just debating an atheist and they don't know what you're talking about, on the spot, they have to give the best argument and just to reject it. So, of course, that's the strategy that they chose. But, what if you were debating Jean Francis Greppi, who probably has an answer for that?
Well, John, have you tried to study up on the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle for ATP?
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's kind of ironic you bring that up because we actually discussed that in the debate. And
good.
Taylor Taylor brought it up. She's like, there's whole PhD programs just on the mitochondria and Krebs cycle and all the things are going. She's like, it is, and I've seen charts on it. Like the Krebs cycle chart is insane. There's the different layers of it, and it's like, oh well, this has all these different processes removed just so you can visualize it. It's so I saw a full chart of it one time, and it is ginormous.
Yep. Yeah.
How they have it's patented, which I think is hilarious.
I've helped some students even fairly recently, earlier this year, they've got an entire semester for med school devoted to the Krebs cycle alone.
Yeah, it's a mismatch because the atheist debaters weren't actually scientists. So I mean, if she enjoys debating, she could probably land a debate with someone like Jean Francis Greppi that would understand the science, or someone else that would. But I mean, just their house atheist. Even if it was T-Jump, who's a superior debater, he also wouldn't understand the science. He would just give his generic rhetorical argument of why it doesn't matter.
They just say anything. They'll say anything that comes to their head.
Oh, because they're debaters. I mean, it's just rhetoric. They're masters of rhetoric.
So, am I understanding correctly? They're mentioning micro machines like cells building life on their own, basically.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
okay.
It's not that complicated. I don't know if you didn't get that memo, Joel, but life's not that complicated.
Even if it's anti-science, they'll say stuff that's anti-science just to contradict what you're saying.
Well, and to Duid's point about the rhetoric, I recognize 100%, and it's one of the reasons that in a lot of my debates, I get so much grief about this from everybody. The atheists get butthurt, and then some of the more soft theists, give me grief about it. But very often, when they're trying to make those rhetorical escapes and dismiss everything, I try to do very aggressive reductio ad absurdum and just be like, are you not grasping this? Like, this is like, what do you mean you're just not that big a deal? Like, do you not comprehend what has to be accounted for? You know, like, well, no, creating a code's not that big a deal. Like, source to target alphabet, that's what that's not that big. They could totally do that. Like, what? Like, do you know what you just said? So you're telling me that you think that the zeros and ones of binary can be assigned to the freaking letters of the English alphabet, and that's not a big deal if you don't have an intelligent agent just doing has the knowledge of both source and target. You're telling me that's not that. You think that's not a big deal? You think that's totally? How would you do it then? Tell me how that's remotely plausible. I do that kind of stuff all the time. And then
but if you're looking for truth, you just won because you're up against weak opponents, as opposed to if you're actually trying to discover the truth. And you could have been arguing with PhD in biology or someone who actually understood this stuff and would successfully give a reasonable argument.
Well, okay, so two things. Number one, the point I was making was that the atheist, even when I do that, the atheists claim that I didn't win and that they defeated me, number one. Number two, I actually have conversations with PhDs, and when it comes to things like code mapping of the genetic code, they don't have an explanation for that. And there's all sorts of crazy hypotheticals of, well, it could have happened if you didn't have to have it accounted for at the beginning, and there's like over hundreds of millions of years, then the code finally mapped everything out. But then we know that there's a contradiction in that. And then there's more and more evidence that's coming out in relation to things like translational pausing, which defeats the whole, synonymous codons can account for this. That's been defeated with what we're
an honest scientist an honest scientist, even if it was atheist, would agree with you. This is the current state of the knowledge. So the people you talk to tonight, they don't know the current state of the knowledge, and they might not be honest about it. I don't know if John Francis Greppy would be honest about it, but let's assume that he would, and he would know the current state of knowledge, and he would be honest about it, and then he would argue that the explanatory power, it's more likely that the answer is going to be atheistic than theistic.
That's awesome, because you guys are talking. I'm thinking the same thing. When you're debating, in theory, isn't the idea to reach the closest to the truth as the people participating possibly can? I mean, I know that debates are for winning, right? But the idea is to actually arrive at the closest truth that you can in that session, and everybody wins. So it's funny. It's not funny. It's incredible that you guys are on that page. With your, you guys sound like way more than me and on many subjects. But I do think that the idea is not to win, it's to arrive at closer truth, and everybody wins.
Well, yeah. So here, I agree with your point there, but in relation to, I'm not saying a but, it's in relation to that. I operate in the debates from the perspective that with the vast majority of the opponents, I don't actually expect to convince them. And so therefore I operate from the standpoint of, from a revelation of truth, what is my objective? My objective is to present the logic and the arguments and the evidence to the audience, and have them to perform the analysis as to whether or not who presented more, either spark curiosity for people to go and do research for themselves, or if they're just going to accept it, be like, well, that one makes more sense.
Yeah, that's all you can do.
Whatever be, and I also don't necessarily expect my individual debate to be the game changer for some. It might be a game changer for some people, but for the vast majority of folks, it's going to be an ultimate. It's going to be a cumulative absorption of knowledge that will ultimately lead them one way or the other, right? And so, long story short, the way I go into it from the debates on YouTube specifically, it was a different context. I might approach things differently, but I mean, if you're going to sit here and argue that you can find X on Mars and it would be indicative of an intelligent agent, but if you find the exact same thing on Earth, it wouldn't be an example of necessity of an intelligent agent. If you're going to argue that,
and then claim that you didn't actually, like, you walk in through each step and be like, so if we have this and this and this and this, then it would necessitate intelligent agency. But then the reciprocal doesn't matter, or the same logic doesn't apply, and here on Earth. I mean, you're not being logical at that point. There's no rational thought here, and you're in full scale denial of the obvious. Even if you don't want to agree that's ultimately the conclusion, you at a minimum should be able to concede that there is the premise that I'm taking has some semblance of validity. Even if you ultimately don't agree with me, you can't just dismiss it outright, is my point. And actually be taken seriously.
Like you're kind of challenging Taylor. I can challenge you as well, man. Eventually, you're going to move on. I mean, there's a reason why every actual scientist from Robert Millikan to Albert Einstein have literally published that atheists cannot be scientists. That's all you're expressing. Scientists don't come to hard conclusions like that. We don't want to say, well, we just don't know. We constantly find out so that we can know. And the moment you deal with those kind of people or whatever, where they just stop trying to find answers, they've left science.
There's a political aspect to it where they're not arguing just science. There's other things going on in the background that are due to culture and politics, ideologies, in that realm, societal things. And so, and you can sort of sniff it out because of that you said, that they become like priests in a way. There's, to say it badly, they're so religious about it. They're not being scientists, they're being religious, and they don't acknowledge it, and I don't think they ever will. I find it pretty interesting.
Well, they might, because atheism's a philosophical position. It's not a scientific. If you look like, okay, T-Jump and Jean-Francois Greppi are their best atheistic debaters. Greppi is a biologist, and T-Jump's more philosophy, and you say debates are largely won in preparation. There's a lot of uncertainty, and if you've done the research, how much there is to know and the limitations of human potential to know the information. And it's a lot about information, the personal search for truth. And a lot of people in the debate circuits are basically sophists, and you could be a good rhetorician. But to a certain extent, you could master the tactics of rhetoric, and it's not about rhetoric. It's about research. It's about actually knowing what you're talking about, and understanding what is the current level of human knowledge, what is uncertain, what's reasonable to be in a school. And so the T-Jump would tell you they have the statistics. The Royal Society has polled their membership, and atheism is actually quite popular. But it's just like I said, atheism is not a scientific position. That's a philosophical position.
So yeah, thank you. That's what I was trying to stress.
Thank you.
There's debating among egos, but then there's the real debate. And that's what I wished, all you guys that wanted to talk about this stuff would help focus more on. There's real topics with real debate, with real science that goes light years ahead of all this just gobbledygook.
Sophistry.
Yes.
At some point, you have to determine that they're not serious about the discussion.
Right. That they are fed by those who want to, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, there's advantage to being a sophist. And so in the debate circus, most people are sophists, and they just enjoy doing rhetorical tricks, because they win, because they're in the public light. And you have a few people. Yeah, I don't know if T-Jump or Greppi is a sophist. I think they're, we say they're legitimate archetypes of the atheist, and they would probably do the research. I mean, T-Jump or Greppi would probably read the scientific paper or the study, or try to understand the topic, and they're just in the school. And I debated T-Jump, and he's right. The numbers, the polling of the Royal Society or these institutes is factually most biologists and philosophers are atheists.
Incorrect. No, atheists cannot be scientists.
I didn't check T-Jump's numbers, but I mean, he brings those pollings.
if I may correct that false statistic, not only can atheists never be scientists based on the actual definition of science and the whole pursuit of it, all that does is it confirms what people like friggin' Galileo Galilei say. In fact, let me pull up his quote real quick.
I mean, T-Jump quoted the polling of the Royal Academy of Sciences.
Right. That's just
you could give some sort of philosophical. You can't be a scientist and atheist.
You don't have to be a scientist to be able to go to be inaugurated into these church cults anymore. As a matter of fact, all it does is it proves that atheists are more religious than theists. In fact, I love how Galileo put it. He says, quote, "In the sciences, the authority of thousands of opinions, no matter how royal they may be, is not worth as much as one tiny spark of reason in an individual man. Besides, the modern observations deprive all former writers of any authority, since if they had seen what we see, they would judge as we judge." He said it in 1612. So all that proves is that the new atheist religious cults today are just using the same exact tactics of the ancient Vatican. And this is what frustrates those of us that actually do this stuff in the field.
Well, I have a university degree in science. You have a degree in science. You're claiming to me that in the academy that they're not atheists.
We can't even. We're not even allowed to really.
You're giving a philosophical argument, but are you honestly telling me that in the academy that most of the scientists are not atheists? I have a degree in science, and I suffered.
It's irrelevant. It's
relevant.
It's not. It is irrelevant. Most science is done in the private sector because atheists have destroyed government institutions like the Royal Academy and all the other things in America. You don't have to be a scientist to be introduced into these groups. It's simply like a lodge. It's like a Freemasons group. All you have to do is the current membership has to welcome you in. That's it. You do not have to have scientific credentials. And again, from every scientist that's ever been useful that I could quote from till I'm blue in the face, have for centuries advocated that once you believe that there is no God, you have left science.
Can I? Because I see that both of you are having. I just want to. Are you saying that? Okay, so if they're atheists, then they can't be scientists. But
Einstein said that. Millikan said that. Schrodinger said that.
Well, no. Let me say this bit. Let me say this.
Said that.
No. Hold on. Let me say this to see what you think. So. Okay. So, well, you're right.
I don't care what I think. I am a scientist. I don't.
No. Let me finish. No. I'm not attacking you. Let me finish what I'm saying. So you can see. Point. Yes. So you're quoting them. Okay. I'm sorry. I misspoke. But you're saying that you're quoting that, but you're not saying that if they were in the position of, let's say, agnostic, then that's a different story, right?
No. In other words, it also denies science.
Okay, so if they're in the agnostic category, you're saying that they fall into the same sort of I guess trap or hole.
Sophistry. Yeah.
Okay, I gave your arguments to T-Jump, but you're giving a historical argument against what you would call the current corruption of our institutes, but saying the current elites of our institutes do lean towards atheism.
Right, just like in the ancient Vatican. That's irrelevant.
That's the most relevant. So you have to give a historical argument of people in past times to claim that the current people who run these institutes are incorrect.
So not only does the science already destroy all atheist religious philosophy, but the appeal to authority is by definition a logical fallacy. The idea that somebody's authority because they belong to a cult means that they can claim things just by their mere authority is the antithesis to science. Those that make
you just did an appeal to authority by quoting
Albert Einstein's point why atheists cannot be scientists.
Can I just I just wanted to, I guess, kind of like sum it up. Basically, I guess, Joel, what you're saying is basically to be a scientist, you can't, you have to come at it a completely objective, right? Because a lot of scientists have this preconceived notion, they have a bias that they go into when they do a test, when they do this, when they're doing the act of science, and they have to completely do away with that bias. come at it from a completely objective perspective, which means they can't rule out God, because if they do, they're not being honest. They're not
being objective, right?
All right. So here's a question.
Sorry.
All right. So here's a question for the panel and for the audience. Who, if I were in a crowdfunding campaign for this, who would support, like put up money? I'm not talking huge amounts of money. We all just put up, $30, $40, 10 to $40 a piece. And I will put all the stuff together to, we'll acquire a email list of a bunch of different scientific disciplines. And then we'll set up a email survey campaign, and I'll like build a website for it and stuff. And we will conduct a survey on some of these different questions of scientists across America. Who's in?
I'd be in, but I mean, I debated T-Jump. Those numbers already exist, don't they? I mean, that's what
I'm not saying that the numbers don't exist, but there's also like some of those when you have to like look at them, because when you go down the subsets, it's like, well, it was the poll was of the members of the Royal Society. For example, I'm just hypothetically, right? Like, X percentage of the Royal Society members were atheist. And I'm not saying that's what it was. I'm just saying there'd be things to go identify, right? And versus across the board, and or was it the national, Federation of Scientists in the United States, or whatever it is, right? Like what organizations were actually surveyed, and was it only members of the organization versus scientists at large? That's my point. But ultimately, I would say because I never trust how surveys, whether it be political or otherwise, are conducted from a questioning perspective, right? I've been heavily involved in politics, and I am very, very aware of how polling is often used to get answers people want based on the way the questions are framed. And so that's why I'm saying I think
I've been this in the past times. I mean, you could do the work, but I'm saying there's plenty of other people that have done these pollings, and it does, like physicists, there's a plurality. If you're talking like Christians or are agnostics, like biologists are majority atheists, physicists are majority theists, although not Christian, more agnostic or spiritualist. But I'm pretty sure you could look into it. There's thousands of people have conducted such surveys.
Like you said,
just for
depends how
clarification,
you ask.
I in no way.
I donate a few dollars if you were to conduct a survey, but I think there's people
if you guys notice
to us that have already done it.
Between scientists and those that are not scientists or just want to be fakes, or those who talk about science. So
we're talking members of organizations that have been polled.
Where atheists talk about talking points, like you were saying, David, and they point to fallacies and all kinds of stupid polling data that's absolutely anti-scientific, but they don't talk about the science. They're not interested in learning. They're not interested in challenging their own biases. They're only interested in confirming religious biases, either for or against whatever.
When you're talking about their professional approach towards their job versus their personal belief, are you going to pull their personal belief?
About the details of science in the actual discussions? Like Taylor and I, started talking about the details of her science. I wanted to know more about the microtubulars. I wanted to know more about something I didn't know about. That's what a scientific debate is. Whether you agree or disagree on any particular philosophical point is irrelevant.
No, I mean, if you're talking certification, like I'm an engineer. If someone was a doctor, you're going to sign your name. You're going to do, like, whatever I believe is irrelevant. You could believe whatever crazy thing you want, and you have your professional standard that you have. If you take an oath or you've signed something that you're going to follow the professional standard, and if you're polling the person's personal belief, if you have a doctor, the doctor could be Muslim, atheist, Buddhist, Christian, but they have a professional standard that they have to meet, and then they're allowed to have their personal beliefs. So the debate isn't a professional debate. The debate is about the person's personal belief,
which is outside of science. Duvid, let me do a little scientific test, if I may. Can you repeat back to me anything that I said before you spoke?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think out of a pretty good memory, I could probably repeat back almost everything you said.
What was my point prior to what you just said, do you think?
In my own words, it's that you're arguing of this hard definition of science that precludes atheism. And I mean, your last point about scientists that are required to apply a certain method or professionalism, and I was trying to distinguish that between their personal belief. A scientist could have their own personal belief, but still be professional. That you, if you're an atheist, like, okay, I'm a Hasidic Jew, you could be atheist, but if I'm in the scientific realm, I will be professional about it, and I'm not going to let my personal belief interfere with that. And presumably, atheists are going to be the same.
Unfortunately, that was not true. That's nothing what I said.
But
I understood that. That's the same thing I understood from what you had said. That if you're an atheist, then you cannot be truly a scientist. You're basically truly not a scientist. And I had the same questions that the gentleman just mentioned.
Right. So that was an argument probably half an hour ago. So I think you guys are confirming my point. And I'll repeat what I was trying to say, is that the only thing that's relevant in a scientific conversation, much less debate, is the science. And the way you can tell the difference between the sophistrists, as you were talking about, Duid, whether, no matter what personal belief they want to pretend to preach, is if they talk about the science. And I gave the example with how Taylor and I were going to talk about her research. And I was trying to ask John more specifically, what was the topics or the points, from his debate that we could have gone over, refine. That's a scientific conversation. That's the type of dialogue.
What's a scientific conversation? Like, you publish a paper or do research. What's a scientific debate? I mean, there is no real scientific debate. You publish a paper, you do your research. That's scientific. A debate is on your personal opinion.
No, not at all. First of all, it's to allow somebody to finish a thought. And second of all, Black church Satanists publish papers on Satanism. That's the same exact equivalent. If someone an atheist that wants to pretend to be a scientist publishes some sort of, paper on quasar physics from the Royal Academy, it's the same exact weight as if a satanic church worshiper published something on Satan. That's how science works. We don't care about the bias. We don't care about the personal belief. We don't care about the religion. We care about the data. And that's what I think so many people not only forget, but absolutely ignore, as just now demonstrated.
Yeah, but you don't debate data. You debate beliefs.
No, but wait a second. What you're saying that the question about what you said earlier, which was pending, because you did mention that if you're an atheist, you can't be a true scientist, and that's a big thing to say. I don't. I kind of don't want to misunderstand what you're saying, because there's so many disciplines, so many different laboratories across the world doing so many things, and surely many of those people that are working in those let me just finish in those laboratories are not all of them believers, or they're just serving a function within the category of science.
We got it. But they're denying reality. They're fighting reality. Their whole life is dedicated to fight the reality that we have a creator.
Yeah, but doesn't it
come to an objective understanding of our perception of reality? If you are tainting that with your make-believe cult, whatever you want to call it, that there is no God because you want to pretend to be God, then no matter if you come up with the cure to cancer, that's still not science. Science is about objectivity. It's about trying to learn things that you don't know about. It's the exact opposite of atheism. Atheists, by definition, are closed-minded.
I'm going to push back on.
It's result-based. Science is result-based. It doesn't matter the person's personal belief.
Okay, guys,
and they produce the result.
Hang on. We're going to take a quick time out on this. Andrew has joined us and been being very quiet, waiting. And I know he's had to drop in and come back out a few times. Andrew, what's up, man? Welcome to the stream. How you doing?
Can you guys all hear me?
Yep, coming through.
Yeah.
Okay, I am. I do apologize if my service is a little bit behind, so if I do talk over anyone, it's because there's a little delay on my side, just for the little heads up. I just stopped by to see what's going on. I would consider myself to be I guess we could say a Christian, right? I do believe that there's a higher, intelligence that created us. But I do want to ask a question though, real quick. Because dealing with, say, the Bible, right? I can show that there's certain archaeological evidence that exists that the stories, such as say Exodus or even Noah's Ark, I can show those things, they have been found and can be validated that these things exist. So wouldn't you agree that would validate the story that we read in the Bible if I can show you those things?
Yeah, but it's not dependent on those things because.
But if they exist, like I'll give an example. If Mount Sinai exists, doesn't that validate the story that we read if that thing exists? That's
It's evidence. It doesn't. You're saying it prove. If you're like conclusively prove, it's evidence that points in the direction. But I don't know if validate would be.
Do you know who
alternative explanations and what would be sufficient evidence? And here you're talking about validating historical story or a scripture. You're not talking about like a scientific theory that could be tested. So you're talking about the science of history and, what is sufficient, how do you validate that your mother's your mother, let alone validate something historically happened thousands of years ago? What's sufficient evidence?
Okay. Do you know who Ron Wyatt is?
Maybe I heard the name.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I bring this up is if you do the research on it, again, anyone, you don't have to take my word for it. If you go on, say, Google or even on YouTube, right, you can look up these certain sites like Jabba Allah, which is located over in Saudi Arabia, right? And in this site over there, there's at least 5 things that we can show that demonstrate that this is the site where this ancient story took place, right? This mountain, the peak of the mountain's completely burned. Near the if you go down off the mountain, there's a ancient altar there, and on this stone, there's etched into the stone menorahs and bowls.
Egyptian cows,
right.
Stuff. Yeah, we can believe it. I can believe it. You can believe it. But the atheist is not going to be evidence for atheists.
Right. I understand that, but it validates that the story happened, right?
What's evidence for it? Like what's sufficient evidence to that's if you're talking the science of history, like God forbid January 6th or something like that, something that happened recently, that there's still a lot of dispute what happened over it. What's sufficient evidence that this is what happened, let alone something that happened thousands of years ago?
Well, do you think that, sorry, I was just gonna say, at least for the January 6th thing, don't you think that, or not even necessarily that, but just other events that have happened in recent history, don't you think that there would be bad faith actors that want to obfuscate the truth of what happened merely to promote their point of view of what how they want to portray it?
100%.
Yeah, they all have pieces of evidence, but what's sufficient evidence to say that this is definitively of how it went down? And so obviously if you have your claim that you're trying to put forward and then you select the evidence that supports your claim, and then you're talking thousands of years ago. So if you're selectively giving the evidence that supports your claim, what about the evidence that maybe doesn't support the claim? And then scientifically, like what would be sufficient evidence to conclusively prove it?
If I may,
the sites that I'm mentioning, the government over in Saudi Arabia, they actually have these sites off limits to the public. You have to get their permission in order to explore these regions, right? So it shows that there's something there of significance that they don't want people getting in there and vandalizing, right?
Well, Andrew, if I understand your questions correctly, I think that sounds like indirect evidence, but is there a specific
but you see, the reason I'm bringing this up, right, is because I'm not sure, I can't speak for you guys, but I have read the the Exodus story, right? So all I'm trying to say is, going by the story that we read, there's evidence that exists in real life that this story actually did take place. There's evidence, such as I'm presenting here, that validate that this story, God delivering the Israelites out of Egypt, there's visible proof that still exists over in that region where the story supposedly taken place. That's all I'm saying.
Right, and that's not the only archaeological evidence of Israel either. There's
I never said that.
all kinds of archaeological evidence they're digging up every day, and
Agreed.
if they found the Ark of the Covenant, which they might do, and all the silver and the gold of the temple, which they might find, that would be pretty conclusive evidence. But
there's different varying levels of evidence, guys. There's reasonable doubt, there's direct evidence, all kinds of things. So unless there's a specific reason or purpose to bring that up, for direct evidence of the Exodus, you'd have to see a bunch of people walking across the Nile River, on dry land. That otherwise,
logic's not science.
Bird evidence.
I mean, there's a differentiation between logic and science. Science, like gravity, engineering, you could design a test and you could do it in your own convenience, and there's going to be an exact formula that's going to predict exactly what should happen, and you should be able to do it, and it's going to work exactly according to the formula. Something like this, it applies logic and evidence, but it's not scientific. It can't be tested. You can't give a formula. You could just give a series of evidence and logical arguments.
Hang on. So historical sciences do operate on inference, and they are clearly defined, like different types, like geology. Geology is, well, not all of it, but most of it is a historical science. Evolution is a historical science, even though people like to deny this one. It's like, I have a paper I can go dig up where it's like the whole aspect of what is historical science, and like list off all the different ones that we just think about as historic science, but not say hard sciences, right? Or they think of them as science, but in the actuality, they're historical sciences versus hard sciences, real time, experiments in the lab and such. So there's that differentiation point that has to be addressed and the separation of the two need to be different. It needs to be differentiated, in my opinion, as you're going down these types of thought processes.
In the role of mathematics, you're saying like real science is a law, it has a formula, and there's going to be an exact prediction of exactly what's going to happen according to the formula. And even historical science or evolution, archaeology, you could use history to show this explains the current state of the evidence. Okay, so here we have this evidence, like this archaeology or evolution, the state of the various things that they use, but it's not something like a law of gravity or engineering where it could be separately validated, where you could create your own device that will validate it.
If I can try to help, Andrew, if I understand what you're asking properly, and correct me if I'm wrong, the delineation everybody's trying to touch on between historical context or correlation, I think is the better word, versus the scientific method, certainly as Francis Bacon put it together, is if something is repeatedly observable in real time. That is the distinguishing characteristic of what this which is basically scientific data. So we're not going to see burning bushes consistently and repeatedly, unfortunately. However, the story of the epic, whatever you want to call it, the things in the Bible, as Paul brilliantly put it, the Old Testament, the entire purpose of the law was to convict people and to prove that we cannot be self-righteous as atheists wish to pretend they can be. And so that is testable. That is repeatable. That is observable. We can repeatedly observe that we can have the same type of stories or negative or lessons of history, whatever you want to call it, in our own lives as the people in the Bible have. And then we can try to learn those lessons and make sure we don't repeat them and things like that. And certainly, again, the purpose of the law is to not think of ourselves as our own gods. So that is scientific. That is repeatable. That is observable in real time. And I think that's the purpose of God's word, if that helps.
I think you're anachronistically, even going back to the atheism, science is by definition, even Galileo himself, it's for material things, it's mind independent. So you're talking about logic and proof and evidence that's different than science, which is formulaic, that it has equations and it could be tested, and you could only test material things.
No.
So gravity, engineering, there's an equation, there's a formula, and that's why I said it doesn't matter the person's belief. If there's a formula and you could test it and it fits the data, that's science. And then the confusion with logic and evidence, because science includes logic and evidence, but science is specifically only for material things, as where logic and evidence could be applied to non-material things, as where science could only be applied to material things.
That has changed about a century or so ago, Dover. That no longer applies. Science is not limited by anything.
In fact, that's Galileo. Philip Goffman's book, Galileo's Error. Galileo specifically,
specifically says that there is no material thing, that nothing is material. There is no matter as such.
Galileo, the scientist, he did the experiments with acceleration, and he rolled the marbles down, and he figured out the inverse square law for acceleration, and it was mind independent. That's the point of science. It's materialistic and it's mind independent, as opposed to logic and evidence. Could be
mind is independent of materialism itself, so that's an oxymoronic statement. But no, science is not limited by materialism. Science debunked and falsified materialism a century ago.
Information.
You're using the wrong words. Science is, because science just means knowledge, but the scientific method only applies to material things, and it requires formulas and mathematics. You can't formulaically and mathematically test logic in the same way that you can material sciences.
Can I just ask something real quick?
Doesn't apply to information.
Do any of you subscribe to or believe in the Big Bang?
Yes.
Okay. From your understanding, how could you? What will be your evidence for that? Because no human being was around back then, right, to witness that. So
the
from your understanding, what evidence did you give
Einstein's tensor equations with the relativity physics, where it shows that the universe does have a backwards time scale, and so that there is a finite point, a super singularity, as they're also described. But relativity physics is used to show the calculable beginning and endpoints of the finite universe.
With people that are atheists that you had mentioned, and we just touched upon, and they're trying to do science or be scientists that they cannot be. Does it matter? So if somebody discovers the cure to a disease through a process of the process that they use, and we don't want to call it science, we could call it whatever. It's still solving a problem using a method that we don't want to talk or call science. So what difference does it make? I don't see. Does that sound reasonable, or am I off? According to what you were suggesting earlier.
True. Yeah.
Joel doesn't agree. I agree with you. Joel doesn't agree with you. I don't think the person.
Science is a tool.
Matters.
It has a methodology, and so you can discover cures to cancer through the methodology, or you can just do trial and error or blind luck.
Yeah. So what is a person's personal belief? If they use the methodology and it worked, and they have something that's provable, and now other people could use it, what does it matter, the person's personal belief, whether they're atheist or whatever they believe in?
That's another kind of age-old myth. Science can never prove anything.
It depends what they want to use it for, what they're trying to prove.
Like Einstein famously put it, he said that no number of experiment can ever prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong. That's how science works.
Yeah, but if you have a full science where you have even a full theory and a formula that you should be 100% accurate, like engineering, that it works, here's the equation, you could use and make your own device according to the equation, and whoever discovered it, maybe their name gets added to it, and whatever their own personal belief doesn't matter. They avowed themselves to the method, they figured something out, and now, so to say, it's science, and anybody could use it.
So methods and formulas and engineering, all that's fluid. The idea, the pursuit of science is the pursuit of truth, as Einstein also put it. And I love his quotes on it. But if you're going to close your mind on purpose and pretend to say what doesn't exist based on a lack of evidence, you are anti-scientific by definition.
Okay, I understand now that okay, I get that. So that's where you were going. It sounded before as if there was a hard line there in terms of they couldn't function in terms of okay, so that solves it for me.
Yeah. Let me further help then. Yeah, anybody can do science. In fact, I've more recently come to this way of putting it. So the only difference between a plumber and somebody who fixes pipes, right? A plumber gets paid to do it, right? So the only difference between a scientist and somebody who does science is basically the scientist gets paid to do it. So, and the point that I was trying to make earlier that got stomped on is that when you want to have a truly scientific discussion, much less debate, you need to discuss, quote, the science. You need to discuss the details, the merits, the methods, the details, the facts. And those so often get ignored for these philosophical things, like you guys were pointing out earlier.
Your plumbing example, you mentioned the Freemasonry. So like, no, a scientist has accreditation, a license, possibly an oath, and a professional reputation, like a state endorsed license to practice. And there is generally no belief test that is saying this person's been accredited. They could be expected to do a professional job. They have a license that they could lose if they don't, and they're allowed to believe whatever they want.
So
here's a problem.
Let me introduce this last thing before I boogie. So in the debate where you have these people that are taking on that robe or dressing themselves with the science, they're using that, alongside of their atheism, as if the two are mended together forever and ever. And it's a manipulation, that it's a tactic that they're using science as a step, towards their atheism and then their political beliefs and so on and so forth, because it's like a pillar of society and stuff that it's become. It's a manipulation. So that's what I see now. It doesn't mean, last part, it doesn't mean that they don't have aspects within their whatever belief and observation that is scientifically based, but they take an extra step because they have a desire to convince people in one direction. Okay.
Yeah, to disprove God. Yeah, that's what I was saying before. And the problem is that what do we have now? We have tax dollars, we got NASA, we got top scientists doing what? Looking for aliens, looking for extraterrestrial life, something that's probably they're never going to find.
I'd like to try an old, I guess, debate tactic I used to use 20 years ago. Who do you guys think? Who's the most famous atheist scientist, do you guys think?
Current Richard Dawkins. Lagrange. That's why I get with Napoleon and Lagrange.
Scientists.
I would say probably people who call it scientists. I'd say it's probably Dawkins, Carroll.
Dawkins is not a scientist. He has a biology degree, but he is a atheist church minister.
Well, I say historically, that's mentioned Joseph Lagrange.
Yeah, Sean Carroll.
Hey, yeah, real quick. Hey, Duid, what the person you kept mentioning, Grippy or whatever? How do you spell that name? I'm gonna look this guy up.
The public space, Gariepy. He's been debating. He was Andy Worski's host. He's on. He's got a PhD in biology. He's probably the current most famous atheist debater. Him and T-Jump, and he even met Dawkins. But he's on Modern Day Debate. He's got his own Odyssey. He's now a YouTube called The Public Space. If you're familiar with the old days like Worski, he used to host Bloodsport debates.
Okay, spell his last name for me again. I'm googling him right now. I want to find this guy. So you said Gray.
Gariepy. And he's got Canadian neuroscientist.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
He's on Modern Day.
Guys, thank you.
You could probably debate him.
You have a good night.
I mean,
Have a good one. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I know exactly.
Is Amy not a scientist? I mean, you could argue when she's he or whatever is atheist, but just like Taylor just is getting her PhD certification. Amy said she just got a master's degree, and that means that presumably she's certified and trustworthy within the realm of science. Like the code's going to work. And even if she's an atheist, even if you want to say she's not a scientist, but she's accredited, she's a scientist, she has a master's degree, and presumably professionally you could trust that even though she's an atheist or that the code's going to work.
That was the same exact reasoning and rationale the ancient Vatican used to certify that their priests were the only ones capable of discussing science. The same.
I don't think she's the only one, but I say she's certified, right? You would expect the code's going to work. She's got her master's degree. She passed the certification, and
I can't even finish my point because you're not wanting to hear. Appeal to accomplishment is also a logical fallacy. When I try to hire somebody for the actual fields of science that I work in personally, the last thing I look at is their education. My old boss, Elon Musk, he's famous publicly saying that college is not for learning. It's just for fun. All it does is prove you can do your homework. When we hire somebody to do actual science, we want to see that not only do they have a thirst for it, but they can show their work. They can show that they have initiative in doing things outside of what you could. In fact, let me just put it this way, 'cause I'm getting very tired. The things that we do in modern science today, you cannot learn in school. Science moves too fast, and college it's beyond useless. I got my master's degree in information 2 years ago. I was teaching my professors. It was, and even my first bachelor's, I was already in the microchip field. I was 20-something years old, teaching my professors for a chemical engineering bachelor's.
Most professional fields
like you said earlier, science is knowledge. If you can show that you not only know the field that you're trying to do, the research you're trying to work on, but can do it, that's what you're hired. Not your college
medicine, for example, has always had a certification practice. You have to be certified.
That's through a residence, by practicing it. You had to prove that you could actually do it outside of your useless degree.
Yeah, you have to be approved by the state to practice. Even if you're an engineer, you're going to make you're a civil engineer, mechanical engineer. You have a stamp that is legal, approved to the state. And if you do something, that they could come back and check that you're the one who did it, and you could lose your license if you do a bad job. You're repeating
yourself over and over and over and over and over. So everything that I'm trying to say is going in one ear and out the other. I will never hire somebody who says they work for the state. Never. That person has wasted their career.
Yeah, I mean, but what you could do is limited because the state has laws, and you can only do many things if you have official accreditation. Like, for example, putting up a building, architect, mechanical engineer, civil engineers. You need a doctor. You need private official accreditation. You need a stamp.
I was hoping that I could try to get through to the rest of the audience, like John was talking about this debate. The idea of science is about gaining knowledge. It's about learning things you don't know. It's about following the evidence, which is the exact opposite of atheism.
That's why they rely on the private sector, because it works better and works faster.
Yeah, but you still haven't given a reason. A response. Atheism is a personal belief system that is relatively minimal to do with the person's approach to science. The approach to science is professionalism that's separate from the personal belief system.
Because their purpose of doing science is they live and breathe trying to disprove science, disprove God, disprove knowing God.
Well, that's the personal belief system.
Talk to Lawrence Krauss.
They've already proven that they are not.
He only talks to people who hate God. He only interviews people that hate God. He lives and breathes hating God. That's his purpose of getting up in the morning.
Science is to hate God. Test and certification that's based on output.
But that is not knowing. That is not knowing the truth. It's not
So
knowing
no
the
matter what
truth
they
You have
say
the
or
result,
do,
the
you
and
output,
not
the
knowing
output. You have
God.
the
Thank
result.
you
It doesn't
for
matter
letting
your
me
belief.
speak.
because they've already concluded that their religious belief that
Thanks
God
for
doesn't
letting me
exist.
say something.
Also, you give a person your certification, they have output, they produce the results. You don't ask them their beliefs for the certification. They can either do it or they can't. And then if they have a professional license, if they mess up, they risk losing their license. Their personal belief system makes absolutely no difference.
No, the personal belief system is they end up saying that nothing made everything. That's their science that they do. They say
No, the
nothing made
licensing
everything.
system,
That's not science. It's not science.
it
Saying
is
nothing
science because
made everything.
they could lose their license if they
Well, no,
don't
he didn't.
follow the
He
process,
lost the
the procedure
credibility with
properly.
a lot of people. Yeah,
Simply
you lose
said that
credibility with a lot of people,
science
but he's
doesn't need a license.
he's still running around saying nothing made everything.
Religion and
It's
science
not
go
science.
together.
It's
Yeah,
As
not
I
so
said
you're a
science.
before,
dissident.
science without religion is useless, and religion without science
Okay,
is
but I
blind.
mean, so you're
They're
a dissident.
independent
You're
and have
speaking
a
from
common
outside of
goal
the power
to search
structure.
for
You're a
truth.
dissident.
Hence, it is absurd for religion to prescribe Galileo or Darwin or other scientists.
Yeah,
And
but
it
you're a
is equally
dissident.
absurd
You're trying
when
to speak with
scientists say
authority,
that
but
there
you're a
is no
dissident.
God.
You don't
The
have the
real
power of the
scientist
state
has
on your
faith.
side. You have the power of the state
Holy
against
hell,
you,
John!
but
I
yet you
can't have
claim to speak with authority.
The power of the state. What?
This guy.
The power of the
You're the
state
most
is not
rude person I've
science.
seen on John's channel in a long time, David. You know
There's
how
a
rude you are.
separation between the state and
It's
science.
like your religion is threatened. You can't allow someone to even quote Einstein to you on. You
Well,
have
I
to
don't
interrupt
that's what I'm saying.
every
I'm
single
fine. You
time.
can have your belief
Ignore-
system.
You ignore everything that others are trying to tell you. You are an anti-scientist.
Yeah, I mean, you're just giving your own personal
You are an
definition. You have no
anti-scientist.
authority. You have no authority. It's just your own personal belief system. Fine.
That's because you are in a cult.
Wait a minute. Hold on, David. Are you? Do you
are a
believe in
rude,
God or are you atheist?
Anti-scientific,
Are you?
cultish person.
No, let him answer. Are you an
I
atheist?
want to go.
personally a believer, but
all I wanted an hour ago was to talk about scientific stuff and enjoy learning more about what John was trying to talk about with these other guys. And my whole night, basically the last hour and a half now, has been ruined by the actual sophistrist, the guy that doesn't care about anything other than his own religion, his own opinion.
Well, I mean, look in the mirror. That's you.
Yeah. You will never get hired in science, David. Never. You'll only be able to be hired by your whatever licensing committee that you think you can lie to get a job.
David, the issue comes from the fact that when you go into doing something, right, whether it's science, whether it's health, whether it's engineering, whatever, you're coming in with your personal beliefs. And people can try to disassociate their personal beliefs from their political beliefs, from their work beliefs. But at the end of the day, you have to have a strong foundation to be able to then base your work beliefs off of, your political beliefs off of. For somebody to say, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist, and then say, well, today I'm going to do this, I'm going to do whatever it is, science, right? They're already coming into that with a preconceived notion of, well, this might not do anything. That this might not work out. There's nothing that's going to come from this. But
that's what junk DNA is.
Well, there's something I'm calling professionalism, and
I understand.
If a person passes the bar of professionalism, you don't even ask them their personal beliefs.
So that's why they come up with junk DNA,
right? Different fields. I went to good schools, and you take tests. You have a track record. You have professionals. You have a license, a stamp, and your personal beliefs only comes up in personal conversations.
So who came up with junk DNA? Who came up with junk DNA? Was it the creationists or was it the atheists?
Hey, John.
Hey, real quick, guys. We have somebody new that's joined us. John Vance is here. So let's let them talk real quick, and then I'm going to be wrapping up here in 12 minutes. So what's up, John? How you doing? Welcome to the stream.
Hi. I did watch a little bit of the debate between you had with the atheist there of Amy. I've been on that channel before, and they do talk about like being objective and hearing the other person out. But the time I was in with that other dude, they kept talking over me, and they seem to have they get cognitive dissonance when somebody preaches, especially a faith idea. They seem to want to ignore it all the time. So I've noticed with atheists, it's kind of like if you preach a different perspective, they kind of they ignore what you're saying, and they don't take into consideration that faith is it's not provable in the material realm. It's what's like I don't think they really understand the definition of faith. So you can't have really a conversation with them. It's just like it's just basically there's two different tracks of thought, and this happens in the political sphere too when you're talking to a leftist or a rightist. Like there's two different like political thought and values that are being considered when people are debating, and it just seems like they always talk past each other, and it's not really constructive.
You're talking about modern day debate or Amy's channel?
Just in general. Well, yeah, just the debate itself. I was just like, yeah, I've seen this shit show a whole bunch of times, and it's just like that channel kind of just it thrives off of dumpster fires, and that's what it just seems like. It just seems like they get like people with the most opposing views, and it's just throw them in a ring, and then you have this big dumpster fire, and then they get super chats, and it's just like kind of like a grift, you know.
I think it's social media in general. I agree.
Yeah, it's just like another Twitter argument.
Hey, listen. So I literally lost money by doing this debate today. So let's just retract the grift.
Oh, I'm not saying you're grifting. I'm just saying.
I'm saying I was accused of it. Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Like I actually did lose money by doing this debate today.
I'm saying James, the channel hopefully made money. You might have lost money.
I hope James. No, I hope James made money. I know James made money because I did 2 super chats in the middle of the debate to tell people to come over to the after show. So he definitely made $10 off of me. But my point is, I agree with you. And there's a lot of it's dumpster fires. Heck, I literally call the after shows dumpster fires. I mean, this one actually didn't get too bad, but in preparation, I actually have 2 overlays just in case we go into dumpster fire, because it's a very high probability of that happening. But no, I mean, to the point you're making about the lack of real dialogue, I mean, that's why I make the point of I oftentimes go for. Now tonight I tried to control myself because normally I'm much more aggressive and give much less quarter to the opponents. I didn't want Taylor's first experience in debate to be me going off on the ridiculousness of the arguments being put forth or the supposed counters by the and dismissals by the atheists. It's so funny. While you guys have been talking about it, I've been reading some of the comments over on the debate, and it's cracking me up. It's the usual BS talking points, and supposedly I am just a complete ignorant fool and nobody understood what I was talking about. I was making things up and didn't understand the arguments, which I thought was pretty funny. According to the atheist, I didn't understand anything.
But they say anything.
What is their home turf? Obviously, she's a moderator. She's a regular on the channel. So.
Oh no! Trust me, it doesn't surprise me at all. I actually told Taylor. I gave her heads up. I was like, "Listen, doesn't matter how good or bad you do. On MDD, the theist always loses. Well, not always, but very, very likely loses. And a whole bunch of in the comments anyway, they're going to be people saying that you lost and just eviscerating you, and you're the opponent who might not even grasp the point you were making was genius and just completely obliterated you." I get so much entertainment out of the comments.
And MDD is more to build up your own audience. And saying like their audience is what it is, and James is making his money or has his own intention, but you have the opportunity to get in front of a big crowd and pull away a certain segment of the audience to become your audience. And that's, generally what it's about, going on big channels like that. And then if it's like Jean-Francois Greppi, you could debate him on Modern Day Debate, but he might just have you on his channel. You could have him on your channel, and you could make the money, or he could make the money, or advance the truth. But if you're a small platform and no one's going to watch you, or you need you have to go through the tryouts, make it to the major leagues by going on hostile channels.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's I think I've done at least 15 debates on MDD. It might be closer to 20. I haven't done much in the last like 10 months or so, but in 2020 I did a bunch of debates. I did a couple a month there for a few months in a row. And it was fun times. I mean, I enjoyed it.
Only them, or have you branched out to other debating venues, or even got big enough? It looks like you have a few thousand subs that you could even do on your own channel.
Yeah, I've done debates on a few other channels, but I've just been busy as heck this past. I sold my house last summer, and ever since then I've just been busy doing a bunch of stuff and haven't had as much time for debates and such. But I've done a ton of after shows, but not as many debates. But with MDD, part of the reason I decided to do this one is I haven't done one in a while, and I had kind of capped out on the subs that you're referring to on James' channel there for a while, because the atheists all hated me.
And you got all you're going to get from them. I mean, I know John from far right activism. There's all sorts of topics, but yeah, eventually you'll max out, and you're not going to. All the people have seen you and that are interested in migrating to your channel are going to do that.
I used to do a ton of after shows from random debates on MDD, and then the atheists, they were so funny. The like Mark Reed and some of the other guys over there I'd be sitting there like buying super chats for my after shows, right? And they would start attacking me and giving me all this grief and saying I was a troll for buying super chats to tell people to come over after the debate for an after show. And I'd be like, how does that make any sense, you freaking dumbasses? I mean, seriously.
It's party promoting. There's the debate, the intellectual aspect, but it's more party promoting, building your channel and media.
I wanted to ask, man.
It's obviously there's marketing logic for it for sure, but like when I was doing all this, I was debating all the time on MDD, right? And then also paying James, like giving James money for stuff. I was also helping James on the back end, like help grow his channel and do other stuff, right? So me and James talk on the phone all the time, and back then, and it's like, you freaking raging idiots! Like, you don't even understand. Like, you're being all pissed off about this stuff. You're just mad that you guys are too stupid to have thought about doing the exact same thing as me. And then magically, after like bitching and moaning for like 3 or 4 months, Amy and James W. and other guys started doing exactly what I'd been doing and buying super chats to get people to come to their after shows. I was cracking up at the level of trash talking they gave me, and then copied me. It's like, really? Have you guys not thought this through? Like, good for the goose and good for the gander. Huh?
I've been wanting to ask past several minutes. You're talking about branching off and stuff. If you know of any, channels dedicated not to just filling, ego debates or whatever, but that actually have legit conversations that actually talk about scientific topics. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched any of my shows, but I've tried to steer that way, but it's so hard and few to find people that just want to talk.
Yeah, no.
After the Jean-Francois Greppi, the $25,000 grant from Jeffrey Epstein, that's how his first start in the business was Science Talk Radio, funded by Jeffrey Epstein. But there's really not too much in the scientific field. Like, I watch university programs, like the biology department at MIT or something puts out videos. They don't have live streams or debates. They just put out videos. Most of the time, they won't talk to you.
I subscribe to several channels like that too. Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't exist. You have to create it. And, ironically, the one person in the business who tried doing that is Jean-Francois Greppi, who was funded by Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, I mean, I talk to coworkers all the time. We're always having deep, esoteric conversations and about everything from religion to whatever popular shows or whatever, but we all agree on too much. I mean, that's the other thing. If you want to talk about just atheist scientists, whatever, atheists don't exist in the real world of science. But so that's what gets boring. That's the only reason why I even go online. I don't want to debate. I don't want to waste time with people that don't care. I want to find people that actually know data and actually share new things together, outside of work.
Yeah, I actually agree with your point about the atheism and saying it's monetized capitalistic. That my father's a doctor. They don't talk about it. They get paid, and it goes against the practice. Like once you're a professional, you don't just talk about it to talk about it. You get paid, and like if you're a university professor, you don't just speak to people. Like you got to pay. And even like James, you're saying like the super chat. That's the general professionalism of the monetized system. You get your credentials and then you start getting paid.
I want to get away from those people. I want to, because again, in the real world, we talk about this
What's
stuff
wrong
all
with
the
getting
time.
paid?
I'm trying to
Well,
find
I'm saying the real world people get paid.
Yeah.
No, we don't get paid to talk about God and SpaceX, for example. I'm just saying.
Stop learning.
Yeah, that's exactly.
People like John,
Where
far
are
right
the people want to
politics.
challenge their ideas, not bury them.
Well, in line with this whole deal with bridging the line between the academic discussion and money, one of the business ideas I've been seriously considering executing is the creation of a kind of a micro journal conceptually, but have it be basically recreate the premise of freaking peer review back to actually fucking being reviewed, and you have to back up your bullshit. So basically have a cash prize assigned to different categories, right? And if you want to submit your work for consideration, you can. And then people have X amount of time to debunk you. And if they debunk you, they win the prize. If your position holds, you get the money.
You'd win every time, of course, John. That's why you want to do it.
Well, you tried non-monetary. I started writing just a few. Church of Entropy pushed me, and I started writing essays a few months ago. It takes hours. I wrote one on 3D printing this week and various things, but research takes hours and hours, and there's no money. So if you're like, I really love science, I want to do the research and understand this stuff, and there's no payoff. Maybe a handful of people, watch my content, but that's it. So if you're talking science because you really want to know the truth, you're willing to do the research, you're willing to operate your own YouTube channel and media at your own loss of money and time, that's what you got to do. So you have political activists or religious activists that are willing to do it, where it's basically all work and no pay because they're ideologues. In science, ideologues don't really exist like that,
except in evolutionary biology. Then they do.
Well, why is it so difficult to find people that want to talk about science just for the science sake?
Because the professionalism, because the people that are professional in the field get paid, and it goes against like the practice. Like I joke, like local synagogue, like it's an unwritten rule. You're not allowed to ask people for free service because like treat other people the way they want to be treated, and I want to get paid for my service just like you want to get paid for your service. So I will not ask you for free service just like you will not ask me for free service. And that's the way the scientific market has became, because people want to get paid for their work, and by talking about the stuff for free.
You said this 6 times. No offense. And nobody I've been in scientific fields for 25 years. Nobody I've worked with was ever like that. We go to freaking kindergarten sometimes. We go to colleges. We go all over the place for no pay, out of our own pocket sometimes. We love talking about science to anybody and everybody. The problem I'm having is that we all agree too much. It's like literally talking to the choir. So I'm going online. I'm asking John and everybody else here that if you guys know of anybody else that likes to talk about just the science without all the egos involved.
Oh, you don't mean
I don't even know if those
talking about it.
Okay, so on that note, gentlemen, I have gone 3 minutes and 40 seconds over when I was going to wrap this up. So
yes.
Let's do last round of words if people want to say anything, and then we will call it a night. Let's see. John Vance was the most recent attendee, so he can go first. and get his thoughts in before everybody starts, disappearing, being like, "Oh wait, we have to listen to John at some point." So, and not you, John Vance, me. So go ahead, man. Thanks for joining us. And any last words?
Yeah. I just want to say that atheists kind of use this crux of science as just like the mainstream scientists use the word science as a buzzword to stifle out any dissenting opinion. And those atheists pride themselves in being religious in their ideologies. So they also kind of contradict themselves as well too. So basically, atheism is a haram. I would rather debate theists, even if we are vehemently opposed to each other. I believe that could be a very constructive debate, as opposed to an atheist or I guess a mainstream scientist who basically has cognitive dissonance. Doesn't really make for productive debate. But I agree with Joel that it's good to diversify your people who you talk to, and not always be in a echo chamber, because you tend to you tend to get in a bubble, and it skews your perception on things. So, but at the same time, you also want to be productive as well too. So I just felt like the debate wasn't really as productive, just because of the atheists and their worldview. And I know I've talked to them before, so that's just my thoughts. So thank you for letting me on, and you guys have a good day.
Actually, appreciate you very much, man. James, what's up, man? You got the last words before we wrap up?
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for having me on. Thanks, LPP. It's always fun. I just wanted to say that I'm not science literate. I don't know. Honestly, the science aspect of it isn't what really draws me in. I'm more so I'm more so inclined for the moral argument. I agree with Joel in that people you get in those, and like John said, you get in those social circles where obviously you're basically just in a group of yes men, and it is it gets tiring. But from one side it's tiring, but from the other it's good, because you have to have those older people that are able to teach you, and then you have to have those younger people that you're able to teach as well, because life is just a constant session of learning. It's just a constant growth, and if you're stagnant, if you're not growing, obviously you're not ever getting any better. The scripture says, this goes back to what Andrew was talking about how the guy says that he found the ark and things like that, and like evidence from the Exodus, and I understand that, and like that's cool and all, but it's like those things don't, to me, they don't prove the veracity of the scripture, right? Because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So, if I believe the word of God, then I believe those things are true, and and it's by faith, obviously, and we know that through Hebrews 11. But um, people talk about evidence for God. I mean, scientific evidence. I don't know of any scientific evidence. I mean, somebody might. Scientific evidence for God, but I know about personal, anecdotal evidence from before I knew God to who I was after I knew God, and then even now, as I'm growing in that knowledge, I know I can look back and see how much He's completely changed my life. And that's what it's about. It's about being humble and seeing like how far you go, and it's literally just every step of the way. You have to rely on God, and you can take those steps, and then when you reach whatever end you've arbitrary end you've put up for yourself, you can take a look back and say, wow, look how far I've come, not from my own will, but from God's will. And, I think that's the most important thing that a Christian should be able to do, is to humble himself and look and say, wow, look how much God has done in my life, and yeah, basically, God is great. He loves you. And if you don't know him as your personal savior, he wants to save you today, save you right now. So.
Well said. Well said. And let's see, Duvid, any last words?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Good debate. Glad you're out there doing streaming. I have my own channel. I do all sorts of things. I've been debating for about 5 years now. I've been doing YouTubing for over 10 years, putting up local stuff. I stream engineering conferences, interfaith, teaching prayers and chants. But I like science. I have my own theory called the multiple truth hypothesis. I stream every Sunday with Church of Entropy, Jennifer Scharf. And I like science and just talking about these things. Generally, I talk to anybody. But I saw you did the debate. You brought in some fresh blood. Actually, I checked and I saw that she was researching microtubules and like the science of consciousness. So that was what drew me into interest to watch it. I agree with John. I almost never learn anything from modern day debate. I like debate and people. It's better having it out there than no one doing it. I appreciate it's tough work making content, doing a channel, doing this stuff. So I like to try to support the people that are doing it. So props and Joel, everyone. I actually largely agree with you, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough to try to create these things. So if you do that, props to it. You create your channel, have these discussions. So take care. Blessings. Maybe we'll meet again in the battlefield of ideas.
So Duvid, do you have, what's the name of your channel?
Duvid before I was the same. I streamed this week a steel conference, and I do engineering reporting, the 3D printing. Next week I'm going to stream the plastic mold injection. I'll walk around and ramble at a conference, and but I appear on other channels more for debates, conversation, and I do things like IRL, interfaith, and various things. But yeah, I'm Duvid on all social media, and I'm a blog on the chess server. I also stream chess.
Okay, how many O's is that?
4 O's.
4 O's. Okay.
Online with that, Jungle, you got any last words?
Yeah, I like science too, and the highest level of science is theology. That's the highest form of science you can reach, and it's knowing the truth, knowing God. But on that point, you can prove God, and it's the laws of thermodynamics that prove God. All you have to do is just follow the evidence of the laws of thermodynamics, and you have to have an all-powerful, all-knowing God, But anyway, but I have this recent idea. Maybe Joe would be interested in hearing this on the double slit experiment. The reason why there's an interference pattern when you shoot the photons, even individually, is because photons, they don't experience time. But when you go to measure them in time and space where they go, then there's no interference pattern. That's the reason.
Well, okay, so real quick before Joel gives his last words. So you guys may have missed it, but in the Q&A section, there was a whole deal about the one and only Randolph Richardson and whether or not I should pray for him to get God's powers. And lo and behold, Randolph Richardson is here. But we've somehow, even though for the fact I only offered up like one little not really serious prayer. I may have to start actually seriously asking for this. Randolph's atheism, or in reality lacktheism, has been further substantiated, even though he lacks any need of substantiation as a lacktheist. my one prayer for him to sarcastically get the powers of God so he could believe in God.
No, he is a god. He's a god.
I don't know what to say, but anyway, what's up, Brandon? Good to see you, man. Joel, last words for wrap up.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I wanted to share some of my favorite quotes that everybody here was inspiring me, and just no hard feelings, Duid. I mean, I only got kind of cranky because we were interrupting each other too much. I really don't like that. But other than that, I really appreciated talking with you guys. I'm going to probably try to fall asleep watching the last debate. But if I may, I want to share some really good quotes. First one I wanted to share was from Robert Millikan, the guy that invented the photoelectric effect, discovered the elementary charge of electrons. He said, quote, "This much I can say with definitiveness, namely that there is no scientific basis for the denial of religion, nor is there in my judgment any excuse for a conflict between science and religion, for their fields are very different. Men who know very little of science and men who know very little of religion do indeed get to quarreling, and the onlookers imagine that there is a conflict between science and religion, whereas the conflict is only between two different species of ignorance." End quote. And James, you reminded me of something Albert Einstein said when you were talking about how we can be humble before the creator of the universe, but just knowing God. He said, quote, "Everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man, and one in the face of which we with our modest powers must feel humble." Quote, unquote. And then what you inspired me, Jargon, was both from Bonbron and from Kelvin, the guy who created thermodynamics, established it. He said, "I believe that the more thoroughly science is studied, the further does it take us from anything comparable to atheism. If you study science deep enough and long enough, it will force you to believe in God."
Yeah.
Lord Kelvin. And if you want to talk more about your theory with the double split, I think you're on my channel, SFB mod, for those that I try to have just strict scientific, just a few political, whatever, no debate, just conversation. I would love to go into that with you, Jargon. I would, immediate response was that photons are affected by time, but they are not affected by mass or energy or anything else space related. So you're very, very close, and I would love to hear more.
Oh, are you saying they're affected prior to wave function collapse?
Well,
actually, we're not going. No, hang on. We're not going. We're not opening that door. We're not opening that door. We're not opening that door. Okay, so I'm going to ramble here for like 10 seconds. Before I do so, I'm about to post a link inside chat. Looks like SFT, standing for Truth, has started he's got a live stream going on over on his channel. So head on over there when we wrap up here. And on that note, I want to say thanks to everybody who supported me on MDD, me and Taylor, and coming on over here. And those of you who joined the panel and helping this turn into a lively conversation, get back and forth, talking over. We didn't go full dumpster fire, but it was still fun. And I appreciate it very, very, very much. So without further ado, we're going to wrap this one up. However, as I always like to say when I end these streams, make sure as you contemplate the different aspects and the necessities for your existence, make sure that the conclusion you reach about how it all exists and how you came to be is logical, plausible, and probable. Have a good night, everybody.